It's already after 7, let's get going. We're already in open session. Allison, can you call roll?
Ryan?
Yes.
Phillips?
Aye.
Rodriguez? Here. Sharpie?
Here.
Westcott? Here. Fletcher? Here.
Okay. And if everybody can please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we're at the recognition of public comments. This is a time when visitors may request to address the Board of Education on any items germane to the role and function of the Board of Education.
I'll be leaving here shortly.
Oh.
Hey, Gran, are you awake?
Whoever's on Zoom, we can hear you requesting grant. Grant. Okay, as we proceed we have one additional public comment from Lisa Williams Hall. If you could approach the podium.
Yes, sir.
State your name and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to keep it up.
Okay.
I will. My name is Lisa Williams Hall. I am a 1986 graduate of Galesburg High School. I'm proud to say that I'm the first freshman class back at the high school, right? I went to college at Carl Sandburg, played basketball, volleyball. I ended up going to the University of Dubuque where I received my degree in psychology and physics. I am here to speak about the bonnets and do-rags that we are trying to implement with our kids wearing them to school. I'm actually here to express my displeasure. I think it would do a huge disservice to our kids to allow our kids to wear do-rags and bonnets in school. I've been working with IDOC, the Department of Corrections, for 23 years. I am currently Assistant Warden of Operations, where I oversee 1,631 individuals in custody and 328 staff members, non-security and security. I am currently the chairperson of the DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and I'm also the chairperson of the Racial Disparity Committee. And I think that allowing our kids to wear these items to school is not preparing them for the future. I can't wear a bonnet to my job. Nor would I want to, but I can't wear one. I think that it's a kid's way of being lazy and not taking pride in their appearance when they come to school. It's funny because I was at the holiday parade that we just had last week, and I walked past a teenager. Now, the reasoning that I'm getting behind it is they want to protect their hairstyle. Okay, bonnets and do-rags were worn while you were asleep to protect your hairstyle, not while you're sitting at a desk learning from a teacher. That's what they're for. And I walked past this young lady who was a teenager, and she had a hoodie on with the bonnet over the hoodie. Now, if that's supposed to be protecting your hairstyle, why would you have the bonnet on top of the hoodie? Made no sense to me. So I personally believe that our kids are not being prepared for the future if this is what we're coming to. Now, in my facility, my individuals in custody can't wear their do-rags out in the public. In their living quarters, they can wear them. But when they come out of their living quarters, they are not allowed to have those do-rags on their head. in the store. That's the rule, those are the regulations, you follow them, and that's it. Now, I personally think it should be no headgear at all. I don't understand why a black child is allowed to wear a do-rag or a bonnet, but a white child can't wear a baseball cap. Or why don't we just wear hoodies? Now, where I come from, it's also a safety issue. You know how many things we found in the do-rag? We don't allow visitors to come in with a bonnet on here. They just can't. It's a safety issue. And with the issues that are going on around this country today, in the schools, in our schools, safety should be our number one factor in that school. That's it. So I think that the school district should really, the board should really consider these issues when we're talking about our kids wearing them. I just think that I was having this discussion with my mother, who turned 84 on December 6th. And I said, Mom, and I always discuss these issues about the kids of today with my mom, because as Mr. Houston knows, I always fought for my son, right? But what you didn't see was the butt chewing he got when he got home, right? If he's right or wrong, as a parent, we have two choices or two decisions to make. And we have two things to think about. We have to think about our kids and we have to think about ourselves when we make decisions. So I said to my mom, I said, Mom, how do you feel about these kids wearing do-rags and bonnets in the schools? And she turns and looks at me with this frown on her face and she says, what? She says, they wore bonnets and do-rags in the slavery days. Aren't we trying to get away from that? I said, absolutely. That's my point. We are trying to prepare them for the future, and allowing them to do this is not preparing them. I guarantee you, if you talk to any of those kids that are going out and hanging out with their friends, if they're at a party, ask how many of them have on a bonnet. I bet you none of those females have on a bonnet when they're going out to hang out with their friends at a party. Right? The other day I was taking my grandkids to their basketball tournament at the vet place. And I went to pick them up from my son. And he's teaching them in the kitchen how to, what they need to do as far as, defense and whatnot. And we started talking about his youngest kid because he had on tights and his socks pulled up over the tights. And I was, whoa, okay, Darian, he looks pretty good. And his dad says, that's right. You look good, you feel good. You feel good, you play good. Right? And so I had a parent tell me that her daughter wore a bonnet to school because her hair was messed up. And that's 9 times out of 10 what they're wearing it for. They're rolling out of bed because they're being lazy, just as the pajama body. And I don't understand that issue either, but we're not here for that today. But at the end of the day, that's 9 times out of 10, that's what they're doing. They're rolling out of bed, don't care what they look like, and they're coming to school with a bonnet or a do-rag. And if we're not going to allow them to wear a hoodie, a hat, baseball cap, or any other type of headgear, they shouldn't be allowed to wear a bonnet or a do-rag. Right? So, in closing, I'd just like to say, a lot of the kids nowadays don't feel safe at school. They don't feel safe. And where I work for 23 years, safety has been my number one concern. And if we allow that to happen, you're gonna open a big can of worms. If we're talking, I don't see where it's discriminatory, because at the end of the day, if I tell you to come in my house and take your shoes off, everybody's got to take their shoes off. I'm not gonna pick a color. I'm not gonna say only the white people have to take their shoes off. I'm not gonna say that. So we should say no headgear, period. And then it's not an issue. Right? So I hope you take in consideration what I had to say today. It's huge. This is a huge issue for me. And until it's resolved, I'm not gonna stop. I won't. And anybody who knows me that I won't stop. And we'll have to discuss this for a while. So, thank you, I appreciate you allowing me to talk today. I just got off the highway, so just got off the work. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that's the only public comment tonight. Next, we have presentations to the board. Yep, Mr. Bradford?
Could there be another public comment that's not scheduled?
Uh,
That'll be short.
Sure. Are there still forms up there?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I needed to do a form. Okay,
Yeah, that'd be fine. If you just go to the
Okay.
podium and state your name.
okay, it's short and happy.
Okay.
It's good to see some familiar faces. My name is Chris Bailey, and I am a 205 parent, church health student, and the director of Christian formation at Covenant Church in Galesburg. This is Amanda Holland. She's also a 205 parent and a paraprofessional at Steele. Our church community in December has been doing something called 31 Days of Kindness. And as I thought about who we need to do kind things for in the community, I thought about our school board. I worked in this building a couple of years ago, and I saw how hard y'all work, and I wanted to show appreciation for that. So we actually had a 205 teacher teach us how to do some book folding last week, and so we just have stars for all of you because you are stars, and we figured you appreciate books. Don't worry, they were 2 cents a piece and mass produced. So we didn't throw us through the books in the process. So we just wanted to give you our thanks and our appreciation from the community and hope this just gives you, lightens your load a little bit as you live out your life.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Yes. That was a good call.
And I'm sorry we did it for the unpaid staff, or unpaid members, so I apologize, but not everyone is getting one. I'll just leave the box here, maybe you can distribute them afterwards.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is there anybody else who wants to comment?
Next time we will list to the top.
Okay, moving on to board presentations, Mr. Bradford.
Good evening. We're happy to be able to present to you tonight on using iReady mathematics program to help us work towards the board goal in mathematics. This year, I've got Jimmy Crowell, an instructional coach, and Mary Warner, a second grade math teacher from Silas Willers. And so we're going to go through very quickly, as soon as I get my timer on here. And so, as the first slide said, we're trying to reach all learners, and that's one of the exciting things about iReady is to attempt to meet the needs of all learners. And so, we're going to try to fully implement this program. It's got a vast resource. You're going to hear about diagnostics tonight. You're going to hear about teacher toolbox and a lot of different things that allow teachers to figure out the specific needs of the students and then tailor their instruction to those needs. One of the things is we want to these resources are used to integrate and ensure that we have a quality core instruction, but we also want to give an opportunity for the teachers to use their instructional knowledge and their strategies. What makes them a good teacher? Take all of this information and fully leverage that to meet the needs of the kids. And so, first thing we're going to look at is a diagnostic. This is a neat thing we do 3 times a year. Our both students and using iReady do this 3 times a year, and it's a diagnostic benchmark. It's an adaptive test, and so what it does is it gives it different questions, or it's harder or easier depending on how students answer to decide what skills they actually really have and what skills they need next. And that's the real power behind the program, is fully letting the teacher and the student know this is what I'm good at and this is where I need to go next. And so they take that in the fall and winter and in the spring, and then they get a bunch of information from that for the teacher and the students so they can know this is what I need to work on. It also establishes something they work on the computer called My Path, which is targeted instruction as far as, hey, you need this stuff, you have these gaps. One of the things we've noticed over dealing with the pandemic and over the past year or so is that students are coming to us with lots of gaps, and so we have to figure out what we need to do and make the most out of every instructional minute. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Jimmy.
So he's letting me talk about math, but I'm going to talk fast. So diagnostic results. So teachers get a ton of information from this. This is a game changer in my book. So I grayed out the names on the left, but it will give students an overall placement, and then it also gives placement by domain. So I can know how are my students doing in number and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking. So that's going to help me target my instruction to start filling in those holes, those gaps that he was just talking about. Then, another game changer. This is what I think I wanted my whole entire life. But after they take the diagnostic, when I go in to start teaching a unit, I can look at these prerequisite skills. And the gray spots at the bottom are where it takes those students and divides them into groups for me. Time saver. Then I'm going to be able to target my instruction based on what individual students need. So group A, it's hard to read from here, but group A, they have green check marks. They are good to go. They're going to be solid in this unit. The next group, the bottom two say additional support. So I know those kids are going to need a little bit extra. Group C has some that need additional support, some need some in-depth review, or we're going to struggle. And then that last group, they're missing a lot of skills, so they're going to need some in-depth review. So then the green arrow shows I can click on recommendations. So not only is it going to tell me who needs what, here's exactly what I can do about it. So in this iReady, we have a ton of resources. And all I did was screenshot one page. This is about a 4 or 5 page document for each of those 4 groups. So it gives me ideas of what can I pull out of the teacher toolbox, what lessons can I go back to, what games. At the bottom there it says Hungry Guppy, Zoom Bounce. So we have games, we have lessons, we have all kinds of things we can do for students to help bring them back up to where they need to be. Then there's the teacher toolbox. There is more stuff in this teacher toolbox than teachers could ever possibly use. So one of the things I've done as a coach is dug through every single item in that teacher toolbox. So when teachers come to me and say, is this in iReady? Can I do this through iReady, or do I need to go somewhere else? I can tell them exactly where to go. For a unit, if I click on that unit, again, this is just a tiny little snippet of what a teacher would see. There's a video, there's a flow chart of the progression of skills. There's a whole reminder of all the resources. There's vocabulary, there's cumulative practice, all kinds of things. The unit openers are fun things you can do to get kids excited about what they're about to do. Then, back in the old days, we would go unit chapter lesson. iReady calls it unit lesson session. So their lesson, if I click on a lesson, I couldn't possibly screenshot all this because we'd be here all night and you don't get me 4 minutes. So here's kind of an overview of what's in there. Instruction and practice materials. Students and teachers alike have digital access to this textbook. There's a family letter, so you can get families involved. It has a short little activity you can do at home. It explains to families what's going on, and it's available in 7 languages. There are slide decks, so I don't have to go trying to create a great presentation. They're already created with the questions, the activities. Fluency and practice pages. You can print them off. You can put them through Google Classroom if you have a student that's at home. Digital and printable resources. There are number lines and counters and graphs and everything you could possibly need right there. Interactive practice, if they like to be on the Chromebook practicing, prerequisite lessons. I love this 3rd one from the bottom. Center activities. If I'm going to break my kids up, they have an activity that you can do for your below grade level, your on grade level, and your above. So we can pull up the top while we're pulling up the bottom. We don't have to stop those kids. Enrichment activities. If you have those high achieving kids, you don't want to slow them down, we can keep pushing them with those. And then we've also got lesson quizzes and comprehension checks. One's on paper, one is digital. But I'm going to turn it over to Mary so she can tell you how she's using it.
I have had the opportunity to be with Ready Math since the pilot, the very first summer school pilot that we did. And I have come to view that relationship like getting your very first roommate in college. You don't know a thing about them, but they're with you. They're with you that first year. You're together. You're going to have to figure it out. That 2nd year, you know what your roommate eats at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know what appliances they really can bring. So that second year's a little better, you're a little more comfortable. This third year, you kind of, you know when to go, when they're gonna come, you guys know your schedules, you know what they like on their pizza. My third year, I know. We're family now. This is run forward for me, so we're family, we're tight. I kind of know where I need to give a little extra teacher craft. I know where I need to rely on resources more. I do a lot of goal setting with the kids. In the beginning, before I really know the kids and their abilities, the goal setting might look like a bargaining agreement, if you will. I want 10 lessons completed. What's that worth to you? 3 tickets, Mrs. Warrington. I don't know. We haggle back and forth. We set some goals. We start out with lessons as goals. Then we start out as skills as goals. The goal setting is huge. The kids know where they're at. The kids know where they're going. I have kids that choose to play the fluency games and to work on their path in their own time to meet their own goals. I have a little evidence of the handiwork that my students have done. You'll see this is some conceptual understanding. We got 92 minus 26. Student broke it into 10s and 1s to subtract. This is really difficult. I did not learn math this way in school. Their parents did not learn math this way in school. The parents now say, but when do we carry the 1?
Right.
That is still what I do. But I'm gonna tell you, I have kids that can do mental subtraction, 2 digits, they're 7 years old. I'm telling you, kids that don't have all their teeth yet can subtract 2 two-digit numbers mentally. There is, I did get a cross-section of students. The next slide will show a lower skill student that really needed to put it in 10 rods and then in 1 dots. You'll see that Ready Math has allowed me to teach the kids methods that they can attach to, things that make sense to them. That student was a student that began the year in the red, and he professed to me several times the very first week of school he was not good enough and he was never going to be. I began in September with 5 students in the red. That's 25% of my students. In December,
Sorry, Mrs. Warrington, can you explain what in the red means?
In the red means they are 2 or more grade levels below their current grade level. Right now, in December, I don't have any students in the red. I have 1 student. She began testing today after a family vacation, and I fully anticipate that she has made significant gains. It's been quite a turnaround. I would say many of the students struggled with numbering numbers 1 to 100, concepts of bundling 10s, breaking apart 10s into 1s. This worked for me. This has worked really well for me. I enjoy this curriculum. I was skeptical at first, but we have grown very comfortable with one another. We're besties now. We can have the BFF bracelets and everything. But I teach second grade.
So this is this year right now?
Yes, ma'am.
So these are the kids from COVID kindergarten, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's awesome, great job.
Thank you. I love what I do, and I hope it's conveyed in what I do with the kids and with anybody that knows me.
Because it's really hard for us to see this, but for you to come and show us this, and people say that the second graders this year are the hardest because they never really got to be in school. So now to see this is very rewarding for you, so you should be proud of that.
What's exciting for me is that the students are aware of this.
Right.
That they understand this is where I'm starting, this is what I need to work on, and this is where I'm gonna go, and each month they get to have that feedback. That's exciting, because they come up and talk to me and bring in their graphs, and they come down to the office, and that's fun, because then they're seeing that they're growing. So we have to make more than a year's worth of growth. We want, at the very least, we want to make a year's worth of growth, but with the differentiation and what we're able to do with putting more medicine where the hurt is, so to speak, instructionally, we like to be able to move kids farther. So.
I think one of the greatest gifts that this particular curriculum offers is a yellow flag. If a student is working on a lesson that either I have assigned or that they have encountered in their path, if it has a yellow flag, that means that they did not pass the lesson or they rushed through the lesson. That allows me to give one-on-one with that kiddo and say, hey, here's where we're at, what's going on here? Well, I didn't know what this meant. Oh, that's multiplication. Come over here, let's talk about that. A lot of times, they haven't been there yet, or they'll have a problem with parentheses in it. Which parentheses in and of itself doesn't really change math a lot for little guys, but it's definitely something that they don't see.
Right.
So it takes instruction.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good.
We do.
Next on the agenda is a solar panel company. Tammy, come to the podium. Yes. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name from the last time you were.
It's actually a different person.
Oh, okay. You first, okay.
Oh, no.
That might be why. Okay.
Good evening, my name is Hans Stolken. Good evening. Yeah, I'm not the same person that you met last time. I work with True Tech Americas. We are the financing company for your solar project, and we also own and operate the solar array for the term of the power purchase agreement. One thing that we do with we have it's about a 1 megawatt solar array in the field. We have over 250 megawatts of community solar and commercial solar projects in about 26 states right now. We've been in business since 2012. We're actually a sister company of Tree Tech Group out of Switzerland. It was started in 1987. It is now the third largest racking manufacturer in Europe, 15 countries. We're also in South Africa, Chile, and Brazil. And I was actually going to be here with Dan Griffin. He is the EPC, which is the engineering, procurement, and construction, the solar builder. Dan Griffin of CDG, Clean Energy Design Group. I've known him for over a decade in the solar industry. And he was going to be here tonight, but he fell ill. So actually took a red eye last night to get here and do a job walk. I actually did do a job walk today. Everything's substantially complete, and now we're just awaiting the utility to make that final interconnection at the green meter. But I wanted to, I guess, give you a half of a face with a name, and answer any questions. I know that there was maybe one of the groups or a member here and it got sideways quick or something like that. So just wanted to,
That's a nice way of putting it.
yeah.
Questions then, or open questions?
Yeah, open for
As a
questions.
community
and-
solar project, we are supposed to be able to allow members of our community to sign up for this. I think it's very important that this energy opportunity not leave our community. We were originally sold on the opportunities to go into all the schools, to have people register, there'd be iPads available, registration, which is a long time in the past. So what opportunity would it be for our community members to sign up for this discounted energy?
So I'm actually here for 1 week. And my main focus is to use, there's 3 subscriber acquisition companies of the, 13 or 14 that I've looked over to use for subscriber acquisition. The gentleman, Peter Maros of Promethean, of which I guess, I don't know what he said or what he didn't say, but that was his portion of the work. And his portion of the work was to clean the floor is dirty. So we're taking that on now. I'm going to be meeting with Dan Griffin's counterpart tomorrow, as well as a group out of Chicago who does subscriber acquisition to focus in on that. We have 14 months once the system is energized. So once you're actually creating power, there's a sort of a grace period, if you will, of signing people up when it's real time. They can sign up and see the advantages or the discount right away. So that's something that I'll be working on tomorrow and throughout the weekend and completely.
So what assurances will there be that we'll have the opportunity to sign up our community members before someone in New Jersey signs up for this?
Well, we certainly can focus on, this community, and give our efforts here, first and foremost.
For how long will that be before you open it up? 'Cause we were told that we have enough energy for around 250 households or something like that. And I imagine we can find 250 households that will be interested in reducing their utility bill. So you say you focus here, but how do we make sure that happens? And I want to make sure your part of the floor gets clean.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so that would be, through these subscriber acquisition companies. They provide a service. They do this, they will do the outreach and the program. So they're set up to, do these community solar, projects in multiple states. They're online platforms, but then there's ways that you can, go online, sign up, and get the price.
I think what I'm hearing him say is that this is what he's gonna be working on. He has not been working on this, but he's gonna be focusing on this in the next week, so I think.
Oh, I'm sorry to cut you off, but no, I have been working on it in so far as talking to 13 different companies, and trying to figure out what their program even looks like, and I've narrowed it down to 2.
I'm still not.
Hold on, I'm gonna try to translate for you.
Thank you.
So, best case scenario, first question, when do you think you would start to enroll households?
My hope is, in the first quarter of next year. I'm hoping to get the system running in, 30, 45 days, and then, roll out, the program at that time.
Okay, so late January, February-ish, probably start rolling it out.
Yeah.
So are there ways with the subscriber company to ensure that the fence is only around Galesburg and the 205 school district at first?
Certainly.
Okay.
Certainly, yeah, we will be their client at that point, as the, financier. And so we can have them focus their efforts, on this.
And since there's 14 months, would it be reasonable for us to say we could have the first 6 months for sure, because you still have another 8, and we feel like we can get 250 within the 6 months?
I think that that's fair.
Okay. And so then you could come back at a later date and give us real numbers as to, we launched on February 1st, and we signed up this many people, and they all have a 61401 and a 402,
Right. Yeah.
close to it, zip code.
And it'll be a platform, just like the other group that was up going over the map. It'll be an online platform, so you'll be able to see the numbers and where people are subscribing.
So there's a level of transparency that you can actually show that you're backing up with your clients.
Certainly. Yeah.
Yes, and well, everything's up and it's all cabled together. When does the fence go up?
Well, I know that the fence, I think there's a spot that was actually taken out that needs to be put, there was an old fence. Is that?
Oh, along the railroad track.
That's already, I think that's.
There's good fencing sitting up there for.
Yeah, but any of the old fencing that would be associated with this would be,
Okay.
it's ready to be put up.
I'm not sure exactly when they're putting the fencing up. That would be for Clean Energy Design Group. I have a meeting with them, standing meeting every Tuesday, at 9:30. I don't know if Dan Griffin will be part of that, as he's fallen ill, but.
They were out here last week to cut down all the trees along the train tracks so they could put the fence in.
I can get an update on that though.
What was your name again?
My name is Hans Stolken.
Are you involved in the Silas Wooler project as well?
No,
Okay.
but I've heard about it. It sounds like another,
That was one of the things that we agreed to though with that.
That was
Not
good
the tree
news.
tag, not the tree tag.
So we had, what happened to the other company?
They're still there, he's just not presenting yet.
Okay, so,
There's 3 companies.
This is the finance people.
These are the money behind this big project.
so who are the other people that sold us, who do they represent?
Dan Griffin represents Clean Energy Design Group.
Right.
as he
He
said.
put the stuff on it.
And Peter Maros represents
Promethean Solar, who was the one that procured the PPA for Saddlesville.
Okay, but also who presented this project too?
Because he was related to this on the enrollment side.
So Promethean, they have a certificate in order to do the Illinois Solar for All community solar programs. And that is why he's in the fold to begin with. Dan Griffin, of Clean Energy Design Group, I've known him solely in the solar industry for over a decade. And he introduced me to Ameris and Promethean to build the projects, and he needed funding to build the project. So that's what we're doing. We're funding the project. And we're also owning and operating, so we're not a broker. We don't use big banks and do some wild capital stack. We are a captive fund, so we have all of the monies to do the project.
Thanks for clarification.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
So I think the major takeaways and what I'll bring to these meetings that I'll have with the subscription subscriber acquisition companies is that you want for at least the first 6 months once the system's energized, and at least get maybe 250 of low-income community housing before there would be something that would expand outside of a radius, and maybe we could get a radius of what that would look like, or get community specifically, and then I can be a little bit more directive as to what my ask would be. Or
I think it would probably be that's trending to the fair statement. I think it would be best to probably come back maybe in March and give a real time update as to how many subscribers there are, and maybe we can make a better plan.
Okay.
There.
Okay, certainly. All right, great.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
No, I appreciate your appearance.
Sorry.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Okay, next up, Mr. Jason Spring is going to be giving an outreach presentation.
All right, thank you. Got several members of our outreach team here tonight, and I want to make sure I recognize them. A few of them are going to speak tonight, but I'm happy to say that 6 out of the 8 are here. The 2 that are missing are Chad Thompson and Jeremy Pickrell. Chad's hopefully leading the Streaks to a victory over Manual tonight, and Jeremy's on the radio, hopefully commentating a victory for the Streaks tonight. But we've got Tara Mallon is here in the audience. We've got Julia Bernardi, Brian Wright, he's up here with me. Alicia Condre's up here with me. Gala Edwards is here with me, and we've got Jody Chapman out in the crowd tonight. So super excited to be here to give you a brief update on our outreach program. Each month.
Jason, can you, the people in the audience stand so we know what names go with what faces?
I sure can. So Julia Bernardi.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, Tara Mallon and Jody Chapman. There you go. All right. Each month, I submit an outreach report to you that breaks down our number of parent or guardian contacts based on home visits and phone calls and attendance letters. And for the first September, October, November, our total number of home visits are 673, phone calls 986, and attendance letters 1,699. I want to pause here for a second before I turn it over to these folks. I just want to thank the board and the administration. About a year ago, you purchased cars for our outreach program, and they've just been a blessing. It's just been made us more efficient in our home visits and transporting of students, and not to have to use our own vehicles. So thank you for that. And just recently, we got a couple others for the high school and the junior high. So it's just been great. And I want to give a shout out to Jeff Houston because we've kind of partnered with them with his vocational program and Mr. Gardner, an automotive class, to service our outreach cars and our maintenance cars. So Mr. Gardner's an expert technician, and he's teaching those kids how to change the oil and do the general maintenance on them. So we shuttle those cars out there as needed, so that's been great. So each month I give you these numbers, and here's the total, but as I've said before, numbers on paper don't tell the whole story. So I've got some folks here tonight who are going to briefly talk about, you know, maybe their level, either elementary, middle school, and high school, and kind of what it looks like a day in the life of an outreach worker. So I'm going to turn it over to Brian Wright, and he's going to give you some comments.
All right, go ahead, Brian. Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Wright. I'm one of the 3 elementary outreach workers in the district, and I hope I can speak on behalf of Tara Mallon, who's at Steele School, and Julie Bernardi, who's at Silas Willard. So I kind of chuckled when Jason said, "What's a day in the life?" I have great intentions every morning when I walk in, but those plans are usually dictated by student needs and attendance. So the day, I guess I usually have a good to-do list, but that's the best I can do. But some examples of the day at the elementary level are being outside greeting families as they arrive each morning and students. We find this a really good time to connect with the families, share information that we need to if we can't catch them by phone or through a home visit. We also assist with the end of the day dismissal, another great time to catch with families, share the happenings of the day and maybe discuss some concerns or help them problem solve. We do have students arrive late every day. We check in with those students who arrive late to determine what may be able to be corrected. We've had a few situations recently where students were tardy because of a code issue. So when we found out that basically that student didn't want to come to school because he didn't have a warm coat when the weather did change last week, that was something we were able to do and correct, which again is part of our job. And thanks to, we got some local donors who have provided us coats, and we really appreciate all of those donations. We check and monitor skyward attendance throughout each day. There's continuous communication with the secretaries to determine what the needs are. I'm very fortunate with the secretaries I work at King that make a lot of calls and have a lot of contact with families. So from those phone contacts, this often leads to, again, part of that day being scheduling home visits, phone calls. We find that, at least for me personally, the home visits tend to generate more outcome than the phone calls. And I feel like it's a little more personable. I feel like families appreciate the fact that we're coming to the door and we're making the time for them. We share a lot of attendance expectations for families. We send letters per the district attendance policy. We keep records of the data, make referrals, and coordinate with the regional office of education. Attend truancy review meetings with families and work with families to support improved attendance efforts. And I'm finding more and more over the years that a lot of families are looking to the school in times of crisis and need direction. And a lot of our families aren't aware of all the resources in the community, so that's something we find ourselves helping with. When this does occur, obviously we provide the information for them. Recently, some of the requests have been around light heat. A lot of families that are concerned about the heating season, being behind on water bills, and I know light heat is helping with that now, my understanding. Also, we had a family that had a big concern about before and after school childcare, and weren't quite aware of how the YMCA after school program worked, and were concerned one day that they couldn't get them started because of the $64 enrollment fee for the 2 children. But we helped educate them about the financial assistance that's available through that program and who to contact the YMCA. So that was just an example of reaching out for the resources. Many of us meet with students on a regularly scheduled weekly basis, and it's just basically a check-in with a lot of our students to develop those positive connections, to let them know we care about them, that what they have to say is important. It might be just to recognize some of their achievements. It might be to help them problem solve how to interact with peers. But whatever the case, most of them tend to really look forward to it, and they hold you to that time. Outreach workers also assist with daily behavioral situations at school, and we do have a lot of students that are still having a hard time transitioning back to a regular day. Endurance levels wane by the afternoon. Some kids do not know how to handle some of their frustrations or how to express themselves. So we help when the dean and the principal are already assisting with other students, so we're kind of the third man. We also coordinate local programs with our schools, such as the 2 most recent programs, the Jack Larson Shoe Project and the Kiwanis Shopping Event, and that served about 230 elementary students recently that participated in that. and they're still pretty excited to show off their new beds. Some outreach workers substitute in classrooms when the needs arise. We also supervise lunchroom and make connections with students in that environment. And that is a good environment to have connections with at least all 508 students, so I know who's losing teeth that day and who's being baptized on the weekend and so forth. We also help to coordinate, promote weekly incentive programs within our schools to encourage positive student habits. So, and lastly, I just feel the most important part of the outreach job is to communicate and build positive, trusting relationships with our kids and our families. And this tends to be the most effective intervention that is for me. So, thank you.
Okay, next we'll have Alicia talk about kind of middle school to Lombard outreach.
I don't know how I can top that. I'm just going to kind of piggyback. The middle school does a lot that the elementary does. We just have a different level. And I kind of want to talk about the last 2 years, especially because of grades 5 and 6, just starting at Lombard. Those grades are tricky anyway, no matter what. With the changes those kiddos are going through, just kind of adding to everything. When they get frustrated or feel pressure, the first thing they say is, "I'm done. I don't like school. I don't want to go." So far this year, I've made 182 parent contacts, and I've done things this year that I never did last year. I have been in the houses, sitting at the dining room table, sitting on the couch with the child, at the request of a parent, persuading them to come to school. And that might be 10 a.m. in the morning, might get it by 11, but all those calls that I've had have been 100% successful. And those were parent requested. Those kids were not coming for their parents, no way. So one of them I can think particularly right now, she has been at school every day since I made that one visit. So that's me. Our attendance at Lombard is pretty good. Of course, the pandemic is affecting them a little bit, and we still have to struggle with that. You know, families are nervous. They're still very cautious about sending their children. If they have multiple children in the family, they might have a younger one with a symptom, they keep everyone home. And that's really, to be honest, that's a battle I'm not willing to negotiate with a parent when it comes to their child's health. But that is still really a big problem in the district. Something that I want to celebrate, Mr. Wright said this at the end. First of all, I don't feel like I can say I'm the outreach at Lombard. It's our principal, Ms. Hutton, our women counseling position, Danielle Cano, Mike Magruder, one of our deans, and Jessica Ferguson. We all collaborate together and make sure that we're all in the ends and we know what's going on, because we don't want to discipline a child in the exact house I had just been at where there was a domestic arrest. So it's really important that we all stay on the same page and communicate. As well as just supporting the student, we are about the entire family. And that is kind of, I think outreach has really blossomed, if you will, because before it was doing everything for the student with everything going on. We need to include everyone. So I have done things where I helped with employment opportunities, housing, food for the families. We had a homeless family. It was a really sad situation. Our days sometimes are hard. And I was taking up a child every morning at the hotel and transporting him to school. And then with all the work of our entire building in our office, we were able to find housing for this particular family. We had another family that was evicted, and they called me at 8:30 at night. I went over and helped them and found a vacant duplex that they could move into. So we are doing everything we absolutely can. I'm very grateful for the whole outreach team, because if I have any question, we're all in a group chat. They answer within 5 seconds. So that's pretty cool. I like how we all work so well together. And most importantly, I absolutely love what I'm doing this year for our students. Thank you.
Okay, next we've got Gala, who's at the high school though.
It's pretty much what they said, but the kids are just a little older. this is a new position that we have at the high school. So, that in and of itself was, pretty exciting, to be able to implement at the high school. At first, the parents were a little skeptical because they were not used to being held accountable, for their kids' attendance, and they kind of just let them, do what they want. But when they see our bright shiny faces at 9:30 in the morning, they started to take it more seriously, as did the kids. From us meeting them with tardy slips, and we have conversations with them about, why are you tardy? It's not always just, I didn't wake up. It could be, I was waiting for my clothes to dry, or I had to wait for my brother to come from out of town to take me to school. So we find out different information that we would never find, without talking to the kids. And then also working with the 4S program. We're down that same hallway, so getting to work with those kids on a more personal basis, getting to know them getting to know us, them getting to trust us, them getting to utilize our room as a calm down room if they need it, if they need to just decompress for a little bit. That gives us more information about their home life, their families, what they're going through, and then they can then be our spokesperson, our mouthpiece. Hey, you can talk to these people because they care, they want help, and we won't get in trouble, kind of feel. So yes, I do love working at the high school. The older kids are my heart, and we will meet them at the door. We'll all yell their names when they come. They're like, it's pretty bad that you know our names, but we're glad to see you. We're glad that you made it. You made it before 8 o'clock. You have a great day. So, and that, you can see the smile on their face, and that makes all the difference. Yes, there are some hard conversations that we have to make about attendance or graduation or things like that, or home life. But them knowing that we care and that we're there for them, and it's all worth it.
All right. Before I hit my last slide, is there any questions that any of the members, board members have for any of our outreach workers, even the folks in the audience?
What's 4S?
Student Success Support Services Program.
Yes,
Yes, that's Mindy's program, yeah.
I think the question that I have, one of the reasons that I was excited about our move in our building structure was it allowed folks longer contact, right, with folks. So when you're collaborating, and I know, Alicia, you mentioned this, that there, there's a group chat that you're all in. So I'm assuming that means that you're able to then collaborate among families, is not, right? So that if a thing is affecting a student, then the assumption is then made that I'm also gonna reach out to this other outreach worker who might have sibling A in their building, right?
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
So then with that, with all of that information, is there, are you, could you, whatever frame that question needs to be in, when it comes to resources, are there trends, are there things that are lacking, are there areas that buildings, like as board members, we should be considering as resources in our buildings? Those are kinds of the things that my brain and my background, and I think Pam might and Tara might agree with our backgrounds as social workers, right? We're looking at this as holistic wraparound services, and we are all acutely aware that our community does not provide everything. So if there's trends, if there's things that you're seeing that you think we should know about, right, as board members, to look at policy, to look at the way our budgets are being allocated, because that's why we have the evidence-based model now, so that we can address those more effectively, more efficiently, or look at programs and grant programs and things like that. You all do great work, but we also want to be part of that. This is great to hear, but we also want to make sure that we're doing this as effectively as possible. So that is less of a question and more of a statement, I guess.
Awesome.
Right, and to like piggyback off that, so like, I heard the LIHEAP and the childcare, which is something the district doesn't provide, but you know, when we're talking about shoes, like the Jack Larson as an example, you know, clothing, you know, those types of things, you know, getting into, you know, coats, whatever it might be, you know, thinking about what the district might be able to start doing and doing better, where you might not have to go outside and you can stay inside. You don't have to leave the school for these items, you know? And that's where we start talking about, having that conversation of, you know, what can we do better as a district, right? So those are the things we wanna know. How do we make things a little bit easier so that the kids who wanna be in school and stay in school, they don't have to go home because they have a hole in something, right? So, you know, that's what we wanna talk about.
How do we make your job easier?
Everyone's, right? You know, the children's, the teachers, yours, right? Because it can be as simple as, you know, my clothes are dirty, okay? So we fix that, right?
I do laundry every day.
Right? Or it can be as simple as, you know
But I wash
what,
their coats.
I don't have the best shoes today. Can we make that happen here though? You know? So just having those conversations, because, you know, we do get it. Okay? We're not oblivious to these issues and these barriers and those concerns, so, you know, let's start having that conversation.
Are happening every day, and I know from the financial perspective, I think it was, one of the high school outreach workers, Jody, it might have been you, who went out and bought a pair of shoes last week for, was that you who did it? Oh, Gala, for a student, that the Souls have worn. I mean, that's not an isolated story, they're doing things like that all the time, so, and we're finding the support for them, so they're definitely the ones that are seeing it firsthand, but these are all things that each of them reach out and do for our students every day, so it's really wonderful.
Any other questions? Before I show my next slide, my last slide.
Oh, and I did want to say, I do appreciate hearing about that interdisciplinary approach, because it does take more than just one individual, one position to make this happen. So if you're getting that principal, you're getting that outreach, you're getting that team involved, it's so necessary, because you don't know which one of that team is really gonna be the one to make it truly effective, and it might be all of you at the end of the day. So really keep that conversation going, and not just at Lombard, all those facilities, if you're not utilizing it, really bounce those ideas off each other at the end of the day. You know, really have those conversations in your group chat about what's working, what's not working, and if someone's producing a little bit better, maybe start really saying, hey, what are you doing I'm not doing?
And we have monthly meetings, so we talk about lots of that stuff, so yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to show you this, my last slide. This is outreach in action, and I took this picture on Friday. Mrs. Patel had come to me, I was here at the board office, and she had a little guy whose parent wasn't able to come get him, and she said, do you have any outreach workers available? Well, Chad Thompson and Jeremy Pickrell had just left here, and they were doing some home visits, so I called them and said, you know, are you guys close? And they're like, yeah, we can swing back by. And I said, we got a little fellow here that needs a ride, and we had, Mrs. Bill and her staff had a little guy down here at the front door, and those big old giants came up and grabbed him both by the hand, and away they went and got him home safely. And I just, you know, I was at the Kiwanis shopping day at Target the other day, and it was neat watching our outreach folks and the other community members work with the kids and how excited they were. But just pretty neat to watch. So they've never met that little guy before, and you know, they're gentle giants taking that little boy home. So that's pretty cool. And they're all doing just great work with the boots on the ground and just trying to re-engage our students and families and be that bridge between home and school. So appreciate you listening to us tonight.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation, and thank you for all the work you do. It is appreciated. Moving on, motion to approve the consent agenda. Okay. Anybody have any comments or anything you want to move from consent? Allison?
Yes.
Yes.
Rodriguez? Aye. Kirby?
Aye.
Aye. Better? Aye. Montes?
Aye.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a report from the Galesburg High School Student Council. That's Ms. Celia Ray, is that correct?
Yeah, so.
Celia?
First of all, I just want to thank you all for letting me be here. I'm very, very excited to be. My name is Sayla Lopez. I'm the corresponding secretary for the GHS 2021-2022 Student Council. I'm super excited to tell you all about what we have done this year, but specifically today I'm going to talk about what we've done just in the past month. To start things off, our November Red Cross blood drive was a huge success with many people from both the school and just the community all around donating. It was really, really great. We also filled shoe boxes with gifts, school supplies, hygiene items. They were all delivered around the world for the Operation Christmas Child just this past month. Recently, we just voted on our swirl theme, which ended up being Enchanted Forest, which is exciting. We do not have a set date for the dance yet, but that is something in the works. Speaking of swirl and all of that, we also voted on potential swirl spirit days, which would be for the Monday of that week, whatever week we decide on. The PJ Day, followed by anything but a backpack day. Then after that, meme/Vine/TikTok day. Then the White Lie T-shirt day, and finally Spirit Day, as we had in the past. Just recently, we decided to do the angel tree presents this year for this holiday season. And how we did that was that advocacies and other clubs could choose to sponsor a child if they wanted to, and so they either pooled their money or found another way to pay for just some gifts for those kids, and we'll be delivering them after school tomorrow to the Center for Family and Youth. We are actively getting things signed and finalized for a potential holiday dress-up day next week, if approved. The days would be, for Monday, it would be Pajama and Holiday Socks Day. For Tuesday, it would be Flannel Day, and for Wednesday, the 22nd, it would be Ugly Sweater and Santa Hat Day. The last thing that we've been discussing this month are potential ideas for possible spring projects that we could do. If any of them, it would be possibly another blood drive or two, considering how great the success was for the last one. Shooting hoops and smiling, which is something that we have seen in the past. Breakfast of Champions, which is also something that we've seen in the past. A student council banquet. A possible school field day, which again is still in the works and very new, but it is potential. And then finally, freshman orientation. That is it that we have for this month. But I'd like to thank you all again. Yeah, it's a lot. Right, but just again, I'd like to thank you for working.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a curriculum report from Dr. Sperner.
With all given activity, I have nothing else to add unless you have questions for me.
We've all received the report.
Okay.
No questions, thank you. Special education report, Dr. Michaud.
The only thing to add to my report is in your packet should be on the personnel agenda the hiring of our jug coach. So our only position will be the Lombard Cross Cap para position, which was due to a transfer of a person, so.
Okay, moving on, building reports.
Yeah, you have the building reports in your packet. Any questions for any principals? They're all here. You never got them?
Is it added later on?
No,
they were the
one that I added over the
And
weekend.
the enrollment report, any questions? Okay.
Well, the only thing I would add is next month we plan to move the enrollment report to the consent agenda, just so everybody's aware. So if you're looking for it next month, that's what we're planning to do.
Because historically, nobody's ever had any questions or comments about it, so. The
No,
report will be available. Let's see. Next is the Building and Grounds Committee report. Who's going to do that presentation? Don't touch the screen.
As member Lyon walks up, I just wanted to let our student council rep, Ms. Lopez, know that You don't have to stay if you don't want to. If there's a thing that you have to do, you're more than welcome to continue to join us, but we just wanted to let you know that you can also sneak out if you need to.
So you have to study.
Okay. Well, we're not going to have any pictures of any of the occupied spaces because students are in them. We are going to look behind the curtain at things that aren't finished. This is the status last Friday of the Performing Arts Center. It's a lot to do. I'm not going to touch the screen. Even since then, the conduit here since last Friday has continued all the way, and there's stuff a hole there with pipes coming out, and we're assured that it'll get done next week, right? Or soon, because they got to do all this and then grade it, and then put the concrete floor in, because then after the concrete floor is in, then they can finally measure for the seats. They really can't measure for the seats until then. So there's a lot to do. And this area here, interestingly enough, this platform here is our orchestra room. In many ways, you may have heard in previous presentations from the pit. So for during performances on the stage, musicians will be behind the glass so their parents can see them when they play. And they can see the show as well. Okay. Uh-oh.
You can just skip that.
No, there's some interesting things here. Here's the back wall of the band room. And the corridor here has this wall's still standing. And there's a block wall behind this. Unfortunately, this wall's still standing too. This is the outside wall of the choir room. And you can see the cutouts for the windows. So the windows are going to go from that room. Unfortunately, in the area back here, we had some wind damage over the weekend, and a section of the band wall didn't survive the wind. But we're told it's only going to be a few days delayed because they get the steel up, so it will be up and ready to go.
Today.
Today. That's good news.
Yes, it's great
That's
news.
good. Thank you. Okay. All right, so here we have this. Well, this is an occupied space. That one wall in the 912 Commons eating area is finished up to this point, and it's finished all the way to the other side of the entrance to the Performing Arts Center. We're still waiting for some of this metal track, I believe, to go in to make this on the south side of that wall. It's the south side of the west wall of the Commons. Okay, so it's coming along nicely. In the times I've been there while kids are eating, it's such a pleasure because they're spread out, it's a big room, the noise doesn't stay in that little roof like we used to have in the cafeteria. It's a really pleasant environment. Okay, all right, look at that. What do we see there? Okay? Finished lockers. And these also have the numbers on them, so it's pretty exciting. It took a long time, and it's, okay, when we have here, these are traditional hall lockers. They're all in the former Area Vocational Center. This is outside the art room. And these are some self-standing areas of lockers as well. Is that right, Brian? And then when we get into the next room, there'll be some that are just the low ones, just one height as well. So there's going to be a variety of locker configurations in the final structure. Okay, now, this is in the building of the addition. And all the walls, interior walls are up, except for the far north side vestibule. All the walls are up. As you see, there's wallboard here, and many of the rooms already have it on. But if I think on both the east and west side, it's on already. Just the middle rooms left to be finished. And we see up here one of the light monitors, and there are four light monitors in each of the two buildings to let in natural light to that center area. And here we have an inside view of our, it's not a boiler room anymore, our hot water room, because we've gotten away from hot water heat and replaced it with these machines that are supposedly high efficiency, right? And we have a hot water heat system in the building. Is that the right, am I describing this properly? Okay. Okay, oh, and here's the inside of soon to be finished rooms. Walls are in, cabinetry's in, the grid's in for the lights. There's some that already have the lights hung. Fire alarm, internet. The only thing left in this room is get the lights in and the floor. I guess it should get a door too, right? Right. But these rooms, I didn't touch anything. Okay. But this, I just want to point out, in this room here, this is one of the rooms that had been a shop room on the east side of what had been the area vocational center. So there's some openings here that are sort of funky.
In memory of the previous.
So they're glassed in. But the nice thing about this, and we'll have a discussion of this later today in this meeting, the students won't be looking out on a parking lot. We talk about the design for the parking lot and back there, there'll be a 10-foot wide green space outside the windows of all the classrooms, facing east outside that room, outside that building. Does that make sense? All right, thank you. Now get rid of it.
Well, now's the time for that discussion, so it's all within this.
I thought there was a whole list. Is that what? I remember doing the change orders.
No. Now you're talking about summer projects.
Oh,
before you get
okay.
to the change order.
Well, I think Jen's presenting on the summer projects, correct?
President, oh yeah, do you wanna get Kevin up here first? Do you wanna do
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, we're gonna take a little pause.
Yeah, we're gonna amend the agenda and skip straight to focus area 3, letter I. It's to consider approval of resolution providing for the issue of a $1.545 million taxable general obligations refunding school bond, series 2021.
That's quite a mouthful.
Really?
Well, there's a lot more than that.
Need a motion.
Yep, need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Appreciate your letting me speak a little early. I just want to point out we had a great, I think, sales to take care of your refunding opportunity. We are calling in 2 of the bonds in that series 2012 that are basically at 6 and 6.25%, and replacing them with bonds that have an interest rate of 1.83%. So consequently, that's generating some significant savings, even though these are taxable interest bonds, because those bonds are not callable until 24, but we still have the opportunity to do it taxable and save a lot of money. Who knows where interest rates will be by the time we get to 2024? I suspect not nearly as low as they are today. And so the results, as you can see from the blue mastheaded paper, is a net present value savings of about $185,000, or a percentage of savings of about 13.5% of the size of the bond issue. So significant savings for the district. Yes, sir.
Is that savings over the life of the bond, or?
Correct, over the life of the remaining bond.
And when is that bond, when are we done with that bond?
This issue will retire in 2027, will be the last payment date.
So in 5 years, we're saving $185,000.
Yep. The general rule, like the Government Finance Officers Association would say, you need to have a present value savings of at least 3% to make an issue worthwhile. Obviously, we're vastly exceeding that here.
Good job.
Yeah, great news.
Any questions I can answer?
Got any more we can, we can mess with?
We did look at the entire issue, but the other rates are low enough right now that with having to do it taxably, we can't. We've been watching the bills going through Congress to see if they will allow for tax exempt advance refunding to happen again. But it doesn't look like, and it was pulled out of the House bill, it doesn't look like it's going to get added into the Senate bill. So I'm not very optimistic that that will happen. If and when that happens, we will absolutely look at it again and see if at that point, by issuing tax exempt bond, we can still generate significant savings on the rest of the issue. But these two are the ones that were definitely right to ensure these to be funded.
Thank you.
Allison?
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Metcalf?
Aye.
Belcher? Aye. Sorrento?
Aye.
Meyer?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, back to the regular agenda and the, consider approval of change order request.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're still on the building and grounds.
We're gonna do
This is part of
the
that.
summer projects.
Okay.
You guys are stressing them
I
out.
thought we were done.
This is a big conversation.
Not even.
Big package here.
Yeah, it's a very thick packet.
Okay, so tonight we want to talk about summer 22 and moving even into a few summer 2023 projects, depending on what our bids and our scope come in and our ability to get these projects done this summer, with some of the delays that we've been experiencing. Okay, so over the last 24 months, it's kind of like doing a remodel to your house, if you've ever done a remodel. So you decide you're gonna put in new carpet, and you put in your new carpet, and then all of a sudden you realize you have to paint the walls, and then you paint the walls, and then you realize, oh my gosh, we need new curtains, and it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. So over the last 24 months, as we've been finishing buildings, we've identified some additional projects that we really need to address within the district to make our facilities equitable and maximize their usability. And so we're going to go over the list tonight. It is very extensive, but we are very fortunate that we are in a very different position this year than we thought we were going to be in last year. And we're gonna go over the assumptions that we had all talked about last year and where we actually ended up financially after some of those assumptions that we had reviewed, which is once again a very different position. So we really are in a place where we can afford to do these types of additional projects and work within our buildings and further enhance our learning environments for our students. Okay, so some of the proposed projects that we have, or they're actually all listed on here. There's about 5 slides, so I'm gonna go through just briefly what the projects are, the cost, and then the funding source. And you'll see there's multiple columns of where the funding sources could be. We have lots of different avenues of where we're piecing together these dollars for the various projects. The first project is our Bright Futures and the 940 renovation. So this project is primarily the front part of our Northwoods building that we are renovating for a new pre-K center. We're adding 2 additional classrooms, a much larger play area for our students. It is just going to be amazing. Brian's going to be giving us some little previews of our Bright Future Center, but it is really going to be an amazing environment for our students. So Russell has given us a projection of $7.1 million for the pre-K center. We are fortunate enough to, and we're going to talk about all of the ESSER funds, which are part of the COVID-19 funding. But as part of that, we're able to use 5.2, almost 5.3 million of our ESSER 3 funds to finance the construction on our Bright Futures building. So we are increasing classroom size, we are increasing ventilation, we're increasing the number of classrooms. So all of this was an eligible expense, so allowed us to take those ESSER 3 one-time funds and use that. We're recommending that another $1 million come from our education fund reserves, which some of the salaries that we were able to fund through ESSER 3 are going into the education fund, and I'll talk at the very end about how when we amend the budget this year, if the board approves these projects, we'll make a transfer into the appropriate fund for that. And then we have some other small, you'll see funds out of Fund 60 for $10,000. We received a Compeer grant for our playground as part of the Bright Futures project, and then $91,000 from this year's Pre-K for All and expansion budget will also go towards funding, this project. So we're really excited. You'll see also on here that I just put a placeholder of $713,000 for the proceeds of the sale of any buildings that we had. So that may or may not come to fruition, but that was kind of a general placeholder. We do have additional dollars to make up that amount, but if you see that in the notes section, that would be from the sale of Nielsen and then any proceeds we would get from Churchill. The next item is buying the JVC debt. It's not really a summer project, but we've included it in here. There's also a contingency line item we'll be talking about. So we financed some of the renovations for JVC, and JVC is an entity, it is affiliated with District 205, but they have a separate audit. They have a separate accountability system that goes to the Delamar board. And so I'm recommending that at this point that we purchase that debt on behalf of JVC, and JVC would then pay us instead of paying the bank and avoid the interest charges for the additional 8 years, since we are in a position to be able to afford that. So, yes.
What kind of savings will that incur then?
So it should be about $185,000, very similar to the bonds. So they're just right at about $2 million was the issue with interest.
Through the life of the.
Correct.
And when will that mature? When will that be paid off?
That will be paid off in 2032 if they were to continue, 2030, I'm sorry. In 2030 if they were to continue to make the payments to F&M Bank.
Are they gonna be paying us then?
They will be paying us.
Interest
So
rate too?
we will not be charging them interest, no.
Well, one of the reasons we did originally, because I thought we said that it's a shared cost from all the districts that pay into it.
Correct.
So they'll be paying us now.
It'll just be the principal that they'll be paying us, that we won't be charging them interest for that. The next is the 1957 floor hatch replacement, which is one of the projects that was not in the original scope. That's $6,000. We have the JHS Auditorium drive lane off Fremont, so we are going to have a small patch of the concrete where you would turn into West Circle Drive off of Fremont that needs to be replaced there. We're looking at $125,000 for that area. In the GHS Chem Bio rooms, which are in the 1957 edition.
So, I'll back up, your drive lane, you said is 151,000.
151, sorry, yes.
So how far are we going off of Fremont?
These are the van door.
Oh, okay, up to where the
circle drive.
Yes, with the new concrete.
I can swallow that price. If we were just coming off of Fremont, I was gonna.
Yeah.
No, there's not.
Probably what, 50 yards?
Yeah, okay, still too much, but.
Okay, all right, so then we have the JHS bleachers in the field house. So with the 7th and 8th grade coming over to the high school, we're going to have to use Whitehall and the field house for potential competition events for junior high games, maybe some JV games. So we're looking at purchasing bleachers for not only the field house, but also later on for Whitehall as well. So we're looking at attaching bleachers to the east wall, where that track area is. They would be retractable, and then that would allow competition for that wooden floor that's right there. Then we have the Chem Bio rooms, the sinks and the FRP, which is a plastic coating kind of paneling type product. We're not part of that scope in that area, and so those really need to be replaced. They're very old and starting to fail, so that's $5,000.
Where is this? In
In
science room?
in the science rooms in the 1957 edition, I believe that's area H,
Okay.
where they have the chem and then there's 2 bio rooms. At the back of the rooms, there are older sinks that are standing individual sinks, and then some FRP that needs to be replaced in each of those rooms. Then we have the GHS contingency overage, and that's a very long conversation. I'm gonna let Lee kind of talk about that as well. But we're looking at $2 million.
And most of the total scope ended up to go $2 million in contracts. What are we spending to remodel the building on Fremont Street?
Sorry, can you say that again?
What's the total work they're spending on the remodel?
43 million. So 2 million's less than 5%.
Yes.
Still a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm not
And
gonna.
the other part of this increased contingency, which makes it a much longer, a little more difficult conversation, is that our first bids that came in for the original part of the building were under budget by $5 million, which then had us add scope to the project, which allowed us to put the band and choir addition and some of the other items in. Then those bids were actually a little bit over what was estimated because we came in at the unfortunate timing of COVID to see some increased pricing and increased labor costs. And so some of this $2 million contingency is really as a result of some issues that came out of the increased scope. So we're not over budget from the original items that the board had approved. We've just increased scope drastically because we had gotten such good pricing at the very beginning. So.
And as part of this package, you discussed how we have money to do this, right?
Yes. But we've got a few more slides of projects here. Okay, so then on the next slide, we're looking at the repairs for the JHS main parking lot at $150,000. That's the main parking lot where the students park currently. And we're looking at $150,000 for repairs and resurfacing of that. Then JHS Area J, we have fin tube replacement, which, can you explain what the fin tubes are?
Yeah, so if you walk into any of the areas in the building that have a small baseboard heater next to glass, those are fin tube heaters. And on large glass areas, you need that bottom heat element to wash the windows so they don't frost up in the winter. So in Area J, they have the older, the black fin tubes.
Explain what Area J is.
The media center wing. So in that area, both near the media center on the old GHS North entry, and then also along the courtyard, and then in the media center itself. There's those three areas that have those heating elements that I'm not sure the exact age. I think they're probably original to the building, I'm guessing. They're older, they're black, and they're kind of beaten up. So to kind of bring those up and bring them to the same level that the rest of the building was replaced with, the first model. Area J's mechanical system was the best of the whole building when we started. Now that we've brought the rest of the building up, now that, some of those decisions when we made not to replace all that, we got brought up to bring those up to the same level. So there is some control valves that we've identified that with that area lack some control sensitivity of up or down, so it gets a little hot in that area, so that would be part of the fit tube replacements of those valves to dial in that heat in those corridors.
Okay, so the fin tube replacement is $50,000. Then we have the JHS courtyard sensory paths, building a new patio and a new walkway path through the courtyard area. There were very specific set-asides for ESSER 3, which was the largest of the 3 COVID grants that we received from the federal government. And this actually meets the requirement of one of the specific set-asides. So that is why we're putting in the sensory path. The GHS staff parking lot, which is the rear parking lot by the old boiler house, we're increasing that by 25%. That has an estimated anticipated cost of $600,000. The GHS track resurfacing, unfortunately, when the track was put in 2014, it was put in with a very economical product that has not lasted very long. Yeah, economical. So we're at the point where really we're seeing a lot of degrading of the quality of the track, and it's getting to the point where it's dangerous in portions.
So we need to have that resurfaced this year,
Will
and that's,
we go back in with what should go back in there with them?
yes, it is the quality product that should have been put in 2014.
And what's the
Yes.
lifespan of that?
I could speak to that. So the product that we would be proposing to put in is a product that if you apply a structural spray to it every 5 years, which is, I don't have that off the top of my head, I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000 to apply the structural spray. If you do that, the track can last as long as 30 to 40 years.
Instead of 8.
Right. So, yeah, so it's a very long-lasting product, but in full transparency, you do need to apply the structural spray every 5 years.
Were we supposed to have been applying structural support?
No, the track that was put in here was more of a really thin latex kind of tack. It is the thinnest track I've personally ever seen. You know, it's really tearing up. It was tearing up 3 years ago. And it's become somewhat of a safety concern. That it's not only thin, it's gonna lead to, shin splints for our runners because they're pounding on basically asphalt, just a little bit of material between them. But this other one, this new material will last a lot longer, be a lot safer, and really be a lot more economical in the long run when we look at just applying a structural spray to something that should go for maybe students that won't be born for another 15 years. I mean, it's really going to be a quality product for us.
And just as kind of a forewarning to the board, when the decision was made to put the turf in 2013, 2014, the turf is only estimated to last for 10 years. So we'll be hitting that in the next few years as well. So right now, that's not on any of these project estimates, but 2024, somewhere in that neighborhood, we're going to have a discussion about replacement of the turf.
And replacement of the turf is far less costly than the addition, but it still isn't anywhere close to free.
Because the drainage and all that's.
All the prep work's already done.
So question, if that's coming up, and that's only 2 years away, do we need to entertain looking at what that will cost when we're in a situation that we're flowing this, if you will?
So,
do we need to entertain looking at that?
I think when we get to the very end, you'll see that, we have some cushion within our reserves, even after these proposed projects. And we're also putting the money that we're receiving from F&M into a Q account to help with those repairs. So we'll have money that we've saved from our F&M naming rights monies. And then we should also, barring no major financial disasters in the state of Illinois, fingers crossed, that we should also have some cushion within our reserves to be able to handle and absorb that cost.
What's the Q account?
Q account is, it's just a reserved account. So any line item gets swept into the general fund at the end of the year. These are reserved and these balances carry from 1 year to the next, so it doesn't just get swept up into the overall fund balance for any given fund. So it just allows us to track certain revenues and certain expenditures in areas that we want to make sure that just doesn't get put into the general pot of money.
Does the people that do the track do the football field also?
No. It's a totally different company, yes.
I'm not too far.
And well, the reality is that, and I've had this conversation, I think a few times with a few different people. I've looked ahead and I'm glad to see that we have some YCall projects on here. But the reality is, for better or for worse, I'm not gonna judge anybody while I'm sitting here judging people. When that field house was put in, there were many things that went by the wayside. And I don't know that we're ever gonna actually be able to do what I feel like should have been done. The track actually is too small for us to host some of the major events that we had anticipated being able to host. And that was a big selling point on the penny checks. And I think making some of those changes, we are probably beyond that ability. And that is the same within the field house too. And I just don't know if our friendly folks over there can get creative or not in making some of those changes, but I'm at least glad that we're gonna be hopefully bringing Whitehall up so that we can make better use of that building.
We'd have to add 3 more lanes to the inside track to ever host a meeting, so.
It's not possible.
Okay, the next item is window replacement at JHS. So we did some of the windows at JHS through phase 1 of the project. And we replaced all the front windows that you can see from Fremont Street. We replaced everything on the west side of the building. So we are proposing to replace all the interior windows that would be in the courtyard area and then anything that is facing north. There's also a few windows on the east side that would be replaced. As part of the Area J remodel, which is the library area, those windows were replaced as part of that. So that would not include that scope in the window replacement. The one concern that we have about this project is timing. So most likely there will be a cutoff date and where we don't continue replacing of any more windows in the summer of 22, because we want to make sure that GHS is ready for our teachers and our students, and that we're not rushing around and doing punch lists the day before everyone is to report for work. So we are going to set very hard and firm deadlines, and Lee is going to help us manage that next summer. So if we get all of the interior courtyard done, and that's all we can get done by July 30th, then we'll stop at that point, and then we will finish the following summer. So they're going to work on the scope and the schedule with whatever company gets the bid when we go out to bid. But most likely it will take us over 2 summers, 22 and 23, to finish that. And then once again, once you get into a space and you start to see how it functions and works, upstairs in the 7-8 administrative offices, one thing that was left out of the initial plan was putting windows out from the administrator's offices into the hallway, just for supervision and visual kind of awareness of what's happening in the hallways. So we just need to put a window in each of those offices that are upstairs to help with supervision. Next, we have bleachers at Whitehall. We're looking at $50,000 for those. Those would be movable bleachers. And we're not sure if those are gonna go on the north side or if those are gonna go in center court. We're still trying to figure that out. The estimate's about $50,000.
How many people would that seat?
I'm sorry?
Or how many people do we get for $50,000?
You know what, I would have to ask Mr. Matthews, and he is not.
He's not here because he's supervising the basketball.
I knew he had an event tonight.
Sorry.
That's okay. Next we have the replacement of the hollow metal doors. So there were some exterior and vestibule doors that were not replaced in the initial scope of the high school that we need to finish up. Since we're kind of at that point, that's $56,000. At JHS we have the runway, so the back area of the high school, the runway strip repairs, parking blocks and resurfacing. If anyone has been back there, which I'm sure you all have, we have a large kind of swath of gravel on each side of the runway. We're gonna be taking that up, seeding it with grass, making it look a lot nicer back there, a lot more organic. And so those repairs are $84,000. The Whitehall.
Can we bill the modular guy some of that?
We're short on the rent.
I was gonna say, we are charging them for rental of our property.
$84,000?
It will be substantial, probably not that much.
Good.
No, they're gone. They're gone.
No, they're all gone.
Oh, they're all gone now?
But they tore it all up there.
Next, we're looking at new flooring in Whitehall. I think I've heard about this since the first day that I started, about how dangerous the Whitehall floor is.
Notice
And
that
how
she
nobody
looks
should be
right at
playing
me.
basketball on
It's got
it.
worse.
So we're looking at finally replacement of the Whitehall flooring, $370,000.
What kind of material are you looking at?
It is a sports floor, so it's a cushioned back sports floor. Do you know the name of the product, Lee? Mondo.
It's gonna be similar to what's in the field house for like the basketball floor. The field house is a track surface, a basketball surface, multi-inch wood court. It'd be similar to that basketball.
It's not a poured floor, it's like a rolled
It's a
floor.
rolled.
It's got a seam in it.
But it has cushion to it, it's probably instead of 8 mil or 12, 8 mil thick, so it has a substantial give to it and cushion.
Okay, then we're looking at new lockers in the locker rooms at Whitehall. Because of the exposure to the pool and the humidity and the chemicals over a number of years, the lockers are in pretty bad condition, so we're looking at replacing them for $67,500.
Question about this?
Yes,
What's gonna prevent the next set of lockers from rusting?
probably nothing over time.
While we're on,
They make lockers that go in locker rooms that deal with humidity, so we'll be specifying those, and there's roughly 280 of them in each men's and women's.
but not from Lion Locker, right?
We can exclude line locker from this.
Please.
There is good
There
reason
are only
behind
two
that.
companies that exclude them.
Then
Henco gets it.
Henco makes a good locker.
So while we're on the lockers in Whitehall, I see nothing about the pool.
There is nothing at this time. There still is not really an estimate of what needs to be done in terms of taking out what would be the west wall. That would be the, only kind of portion that Russell has not had time to fully investigate, given everything else.
But hasn't something been done about the humidity issue though?
We have done something.
I thought we had to remediate that.
So we have remediated it. Helm has come in, Helm has done a lot of work on the Dectron unit, and actually it's functioning really well right now. So the humidity issue has been hopefully resolved.
So we don't need to replace that piece as we thought 6 months ago.
Correct. So right now, knock on wood,
today.
it is working. But there were other concerns that it's very hard to hold meets there. There isn't a lot of space for fans. There isn't a lot of deck area for observation. So some of those other things we need to explore in the future.
Our expansion of the parking back there would not preclude any change to that building.
No.
No, because there's still like grassy area on the west side
Okay.
that would allow for expansion. Okay, we also need to replace the floor drains in the shower at Whitehall. We're looking at $21,000 for that. And then Whitehall, the gym area needs to be painted badly. We have some drywall repairs from some damage that had happened a few years back.
This includes the drywall repairs or
Yes,
just paint?
it was the drywall repair as well, correct? The 23? Okay, on to the next page. We are renovating the former wrestling building to be the 7-8 wood shop. So those renovations just increase in power, some exhaust systems. We need to put in a sink, a few other items, put in a staining room. That's estimated at $50,000. Hawthorne Center, which is where we have all of our storage, where maintenance works out of. We have been replacing sections of that roofing over time, and so we really need to replace the final 3 sections, which has an estimated cost of $75,000. We are putting in inventory shelving. We've never purchased inventory shelving in this district's history, so as we upgrade our inventory system, become a lot more efficient in that, we'll be looking at purchasing shelving from a shelving consultant. We haven't seen the final plans for that yet, but.
Where would those go?
So in Hawthorne, so do you know where the food service storage is and where the refrigerator and freezers are? So it would start in that area and then it would go to the back building. through there, and so that will all be organized, and that's how we'll track all of our inventory for the district in those two areas of the buildings. Next, we're looking at sensory pathways in the interior courtyards at King. Once again, that's part of ESSER 3 money, very specific set-asides that had to be used, that we're estimating $20,000 for those sensory paths in the interior courtyards. We need to do quite a bit of landscaping, not only at the high school, but at Bright Futures, at King, at Steele. And so this is a budget that has not been set. We actually met with the landscape architect today. Brian's gonna go over some of those renderings on what we're proposing to do, but we have a placeholder of $150,000. Steele, when Steele was renovated in 2011, a lot of the original casework was not taken out of those classrooms and was in very, very poor condition. So the state of Illinois offered school maintenance grants again for 2021, 2022. We've been awarded $50,000 from the state. And so we're taking $50,000 of our school maintenance grant money and applying that and replacing the cabinetry in the original part of Steele that was not replaced in 2011 when they did the large renovation. So that's $522,200, and $50,000 of that's being offset by the state maintenance grant. In the music room, we're doing a few things in the music room. When that room was renovated in 2011, they did not put any windows in that room, and so it's kind of a strange room. We need to upgrade the north wall. We have some moisture issues, so we're relaminating that. And next page here, we're putting additional windows, or not additional, we're putting windows in that will face north, 3 windows. We're also putting in some acoustical panels. Are we putting in acoustical panels in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Summer routine.
Okay, all right. And then we have a sensory path at Steele, same as we had at the high school and at King. We have acoustical panels that we've added to Whitehall to keep the sound down in Whitehall Gym. We need to replace the athletic mats at the end of each court. They're not in great condition at Whitehall, for about $10,000. So we have
another question.
Yes.
So we're proposing to replace the floor in the high school gym, but there's nothing in there about painting and cleaning up and taking care of the ceiling and everything.
In Whitehall, you mean?
No, in the main gym.
There's
This is
nothing.
1957 floor patch replacement.
That's a hatch. We have these holes that go down to a crawl space that are, there's a big gap at the edge of each of them. They've been tiled over, LVT'd nicely, but they're still
So there's nothing in here for the main Steel gym then?
No, there's nothing for this year for Theo.
Why not?
Because there were so many other numbers out here that
Well, just redid their floor and brought new lockers.
trying to.
And their locker rooms, and their locker rooms is gonna be.
Well, at one point, this did have a large number to paint that room. And the discussion was, you don't paint if you're not doing a floor.
I agree.
So at some point, the floor would need to be done. At that point, the painting would be done.
So at whatever point we do the floor, we need to do the floor.
And we only have so many times that we can fully strip down that floor. One of the things that I need to do is get in touch with the flooring company. When we had that floor replaced, we did not replace it with the same thickness of board at the time that happened, and the reason is because we couldn't put in a 100-year floor because the wood was not available. And if you remember, that leak happened in middle of July, and we had to have the floor ready by November for basketball season. So the only choice we had was to put in a 50-year floor. And so you can only strip that down, I believe 3 times, but I'm gonna verify that, in the life of the floor. So we wanna be careful that we don't do that too quickly, because we we've only got 3 opportunities to do it before it has to be replaced. So when we strip down that floor, when we get to that point, a few years down the road here, we're still in pretty good shape at this point, then we'll paint the old gym and the ceiling, and we'll kind of do the whole kit and caboodle.
I think this also falls in the category, we didn't want to put too many projects into the 712 building for this summer. Because we want to make sure, once again, everyone's out by August 1st. You see, if you look at this list, the majority of the projects are not in that building.
Yes.
I had a question about the pre-K. You said we were increasing.
I'm sorry?
You said we'd be increasing the classroom.
Number of
Yes.
classrooms.
We're increasing,
We will have 10.
So, if they do pass the policy requirement that for pre-K for everybody, are we gonna, is that gonna be available to everybody in Galesburg, or are we gonna have to expand some more?
So we'll have 6 classrooms that are the half-day classrooms like we currently have. Then we'll have our 2 full-day classrooms, and then we'll have 2 expansion classrooms. We don't know what that'll look like at this point.
Maybe you don't know what it'll look like.
So we don't know if we would add, it depends on what the needs are.
Would you
And
have room to add though?
right, so we may have 2 additional half-day classrooms, which would be 4 additional classrooms. We could do 1 full day and then 1 half-day program. We could do a lot of different combinations.
Right now, we're only running 7 classrooms.
But is it gonna be big enough for?
And
all
the
Galesburg?
plans, the
No.
plans drop 10 classrooms. We have to resubmit our preschool grant, it expires this year. So there's a whole lot of factors out there that we can't reliably say 100% what's gonna happen in the.
I mean, it's really pushing for that, for childcare and pre-K for everyone.
The most, the
And I
biggest
don't
number
want
we
to
can
spend
get
$7
to
million on
is
something,
10.
and then go, oh, it's not big enough, and now we have to come back and say, oh, we gotta go buy another building.
See, but
I'm just asking what the,
my assumption is pre-K for all, they're not meaning it's all public school preschool, because they're not gonna zero out the budget for Head Start. If anything,
that's what they do, they're trying to push it for everyone.
no, but they're gonna include various delivery models. Head Start will be one of them, school district will be one of them. I am not sure it will not preclude having childcare centers doing as well, which is part of even the Illinois project right now. Childcare centers can apply for and receive pre-K for all funding to run their programs. I would be very surprised if a federal initiative will shoot the legs out of an ongoing initiative in the state. I think just if it happens, which is a good question, it's gonna be funded through multiple sources.
Sure, are we ready, like, will we be ready, can we expand?
If we can find
We're
teachers.
building 3 more classrooms, we're using now.
Because ideally, I think that's where it should be.
You're right, we would not have enough space to serve every child in Galesburg. But I would, Head Start is the only remaining program from the 1965 War on Poverty. And it'd be very difficult to see a program that's been around for almost 60 years.
No, I'm not saying eliminate that at all.
But
Would
they may be
then
part of
us,
the,
are we big enough? Because I don't think we are.
well, they probably have money to expand as well. They keep doing very nicely in federal allocations. I'm out of that business now.
There's a need for it.
If we expand by 3 classrooms and we have 6 more sections, that's 120 more students. Up to 120 more students. All right? No.
Yes, and we're currently serving
Up to
right
20
about
class.
200. Is this how? And our average kindergarten classes are right around 300, so.
Between us and Head Start, we could be serving everyone in town.
Yes.
That's all I'm concerned about. I don't want to spend $7 million on something and then to find out we're not big enough. You know, kind of how we find out when every project we start, something comes back and then we have to redo it all. It's different.
Well, I think it's an excellent point. I would hate to sit here and guarantee one thing or the other because we can't.
Just want to be it.
But yeah, in order to have enough for every child in Galesburg 3 and 4 years old.
A whole high school.
We need,
A building for
I know, I'm
600.
just trying to think,
Yeah.
we need how many more rooms? We have 28 rooms. Right. So, yeah, I mean,
We have the space there. It's, yes, but we wouldn't be able to do office, administrative office. It would be all, so but the space is there.
Yeah, but those rooms
I don't
on the
think
other
we can
side.
find the staff, to
We'll
be
be
quite
looking
honest.
at,
You got staff and a lot of things, but
yeah,
the space is there.
Staffing's gonna be the hugest issue.
That's a good question. We have the ability,
We have the ability.
we have the ability to keep this building too. See, that's really interesting. If money came in to do that, there'd probably be money for buildings and we could
More money to
do some build gas. See, one of the nice things about the plan that Brian's gonna show us is that each classroom is a bathroom. We have kindergartens in this district where every kindergarten class has a bathroom, and our preschool doesn't. Doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, go back.
Okay.
You okay?
All right, so we've gone through our list. So we're looking at an anticipated cost of $15,428,909. We would be looking at 8.8 million of that coming from the education fund, 150,000 coming out of O&M reserves, 221,000 coming out of some additional Fund 60 reserves we have. 5.3, almost 5.4 million is coming out of ESSER 3. And then we have some other various grants that make up $854,400.
What is Fund 60 again, please?
That's where your facility sales tax money is.
And our construction, all of our construction bonds go into that account to pay for all of our construction. So if the board were to approve these projects, we would be looking at a transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 60 reflected in the FY22 amended budget. So then the question is, how are we going to pay for this? Where is this money going to come from? So last year, when we were talking about the impact of COVID, we had initially talked about potential deficits. I'm gonna actually skip ahead and come back to this slide. So when we passed that FY21 budget, the assumptions that we were looking at, kind of our worst case scenario, were that we would have a reduction in our CPPRT, which is corporate personal property replacement tax. And we were anticipating that it would be reduced, the revenues, by 20%. That we would be looking at having our interest income reduced by 80% overall, that we would possibly only receive 2 of our categorical payments from the state of Illinois, that our EBF funding could potentially be reduced by 12%, which was within the governor's statutory ability to do that, that our tax year 2020 levy would be the same as our tax year 2019, that we were looking at about a 20% reduction in collections of property taxes, that our ESSA allocation would only be $1.9 million. So at that point, those were the only federal COVID relief funds that we knew we were going to have. And that we would see a 10% decrease in our facility sales tax, our 1% or 1 cent sales tax. So looking at what our actual outcomes were very, very different and for the positive. So we did not see a 20% reduction in our CPPRT. The revenues came in the same as in 2019. Our interest income was not impacted. First of all, our interest income has been very low the last couple of years because virtually we're not receiving anything on our investments. So we did not see a change in that. We did receive all of our state and federal payments for FY21. Our EBF funding remained stable and was not reduced. Our EAV increased by 2.7%, and we actually had an additional $742,000 of revenue related to the EAV that we saw through our levy. Our collection rates were not impacted. They were actually on the same pace as they had been in prior years. We were concerned about that with property taxes. I'm going to show you our COVID-19 grants that we received, which far exceeded
the 1.9 million, that we had anticipated. And then our FY20 receipts for our 1 cent sales tax were actually up about $300,000. So all the things that we had listened to experts around the state and made our financial assumptions on just simply didn't come to fruition, which was excellent. So I'm gonna flip back to this slide here. So when we approved the FY22 budget, we were looking at fund balances at the end of FY22 in the ed fund being about $37.7 million. And in Fund 20, which is operations and maintenance, being $2.8 million. If the board were to approve all of these projects, we would be looking at ending FY22 with $28.9 million in the education fund and $2,683,000 in Fund 20. So we would definitely still be able to meet all of our operational goals, which are part of board policy with these fund balances. And we're primarily spending our federal dollars for COVID to fund these projects. And I'm gonna skip ahead here. Okay, so this slide represents all of our federal response monies that we have received or will receive when the expenditures are actually made. And we have, through some of these grants through 2024, to expend this money. So the elementary and secondary relief digital equity grant, which was for K-12 in FY21, was $260,000. The digital equity relief grant for FY22 was another $217,000 that we received. ESSER 1, we received 1.9 million. ESSER 2, we received 6 million. ESSER 3 was the big one that we received 14.5 million on. Then we just found out about a month ago that there was something as part of the American Rescue Plan for McKinney-Vento homeless grant, which that was another $59,900. And then we had a pre-K gear grant last year, which was to purchase manipulatives for our pre-K students so they didn't sit in front of a screen all day long for instruction, and that was $36,000. So when you add all of those up, our COVID federal and state response money was $23,195,307. So we have received a tremendous amount of money that then we're looking at reinvesting in these capital projects and doing some of the other things that we mentioned.
But some of the stuff you spent already, we bought.
Some of it is spent, correct?
We bought
yes.
Lots of things for students and staff and hotspots and.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we purchased a tremendous amount of technology, both software and hardware.
Renting a tent for lunch, all those things.
Absolutely.
The COVID.
You know, I would have to go back and look, but we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on professional development, paying our staff, so that they could be up to speed for, you know, the virtual environment that we were in.
It's not all going to projects.
No,
We bought a
no.
ton of devices.
Well, it can't. I mean, many of the federal funds have pretty prescriptive ways in which we're supposed to spend that money. So I think the portions of the money that we're allowed to augment our buildings in support of public health is where this money is being flowed to capital projects, if I'm not wrong.
You are correct. And all the federal response money is very prescriptive. So it's very detailed on what you can spend and how you can spend that.
And we have to
What
audit that.
What are some of the things that we use the McKinney-Vento for?
So actually, we purchased 2 vehicles for the outreach workers at the high school. And then we've also put money in for those very kinds of supplies that you had mentioned before: shoes, coats, backpacks, school supplies, to offset if a student wants to take an AP class or they need to pay for their dual credit class. All of those things can be used with that McKinney-Vento money. So that's what we're using the remainder for. Our salaries for all of our outreach workers were already included in ESSER 3, so that's been taken care of through those funds for 3 years.
So the financial outlook is tons better than we had anticipated. But I'm also wondering if any of the conversations, because at one point, the conversations I was a part of were looking at some of these areas not feeling impact until possibly 23, 24. So like, because of the lack of unemployment, et cetera, that, and the influx of grants and aid to offset some of the immediate need, that at some point that those funds would go away. And so if there was going to be some lingering issues, some of that wouldn't be felt until 2023, 2024.
Yes.
So are those conversations still happening? Are we still hearing that there's a concern that we need to look on the horizon? Because I also want to not overspend in anticipation of possible need.
So actually, a lot of those fears really didn't come to fruition, even in kind of those doomsday, further on down the road kind of scenarios. You know, we've seen basically historic record low unemployment. I mean, there's help wanted signs everywhere. We're seeing our local one-cent sales tax dollars increasing. We've really not seen the impact on the economy in most of the areas that would impact us. Definitely there are many industries that have been hit hard by COVID, but the ones that impact us the most from both a local and a state and federal perspective actually have not really impacted, or we're seeing a future impact on our funding. So once again, our fund balances will be far exceeding what the board policy goals are. So we have that cushion for a rainy day fund if something were to turn around very quickly in the state of Illinois and we would be looking at reduced funding.
So on our agenda further is to consider the approval of lowering the tax levy. So everything we're seeing here, are we still okay with lowering the tax levy?
Yes.
Like I asked before, I don't want to get out here to Kiana's point 3 or 4 years and then we have to say, uh-oh.
So this slide I have up here represents so the column in the middle represents where we thought we were going to be with ending fund balances at the end of FY21 and where we actually ended up. So we thought we would only have $15 million, which when I say only $15 million, when I came here in 2015, we ended the year with just a little over $8 million in the ed fund. So $15 million is still far better than where we were at when we had to make hard decisions several years back. But we were looking at $15 million worst case scenario. We actually ended the year with FY21 with $29.4 million. And so even if the board accepted every project that we were looking at, we would still end with an ending fund balance in the ed fund alone at a little over $28 million. And that's without any additional, I'm going to say unanticipated funds that may come up. So for instance, no one had any idea about the McKinney-Vento American Rescue Plan grant. It was something that just kind of popped up about a month ago. So there could be additional grant monies. Another one that we didn't know about was digital equity for FY22. We knew there was digital equity for FY21, but then the federal government reissued and reallocated some funds and we had an additional $217,000. So these monies keep popping up. So I think to kind of answer Tiana's question and kind of your question as well, if anything, I think the surprises will be in additional funds that we haven't anticipated versus a reduction in funds.
So by the summary, we're actually about $16.5 million ahead of where we thought we could be.
Correct. Correct.
I don't want to be a naysayer here, but we still have the state just came out last week and said they had a great year in the investments in the pension funds. We still have that ability to change how pensions are funded yet, and it still worries me. But who knows what's going to happen there? He said, we haven't mentioned it, but it's The responsibility, I think, ultimately is gonna be turned back to the
Correct.
districts.
And so we've looked at those models of if a cost shift were to occur, and most likely the cost shift would occur at about 0.5% per year. And right now, given our payroll, given some of the long-term assumptions that I've looked at a cursory level, we would be able to assume that 0.5% cost shift if that did occur.
Well, just so everybody, wonders where does it end? The cost shift could occur in many different ways, but most models that we're showing would be 6% of your TRS payroll. So what's our TRS payroll right now?
I cannot tell you off the top
It's
of
in
my
the
head.
20-some million.
Yes.
But I don't remember what it is.
It's,
I think it's somewhere like 24 million anyway. So 6% of that. It'd be about another, yeah, I think it'd be another 1.2 million. No.
Are there any additional questions?
I do have some.
Okay.
And I don't wanna get into weeds, so I don't need answers, just to put them out there. If we're doing wood shop in the wrestling room, where's wrestling going? And the flooring in the field house is great for most sports, but I will tell you from personal experience, it's not good for dancers. They cannot pirouette on that kind of flooring because they will rip their knee.
You're talking about the athletic sports floor, not the wood floor.
Correct. The athletic, which is what my understanding is what we're looking at putting.
Right, I just wanna make sure everybody, because there's both kinds of the field.
Yeah, so just to kind of keep, so as these projects are moving forward, just to making sure that the stakeholders that are involved in some of these changes are being consulted with so that we're not replicating decisions made
Problem.
like back in 2013 and 2014.
Can I answer the wrestling question?
Well, right now, we have to put them in, another location, Gale or Rosehoven or some, we would love to have a dedicated space for them that was just theirs. It doesn't cost a fortune. We would like to find them more permanent locations. Right now they're shuttling.
So is Gale, in your projections for next year, what would be in the Gale gym? There's nothing required in the 7-12 program that requires that gym. So wrestling could be there.
Oh, one more thing. The mention of removing the gravel on the strip and putting grass. So does that mean that in some way, I just would like to see us, I don't know how high the speed bumps have to be back there. And I don't know how narrow the area to drive, but when I lived back in that area, I no longer live over there, but when I lived back there, the amount of trucks that would rev and speed down that landing strip on their way into classes at 7:30, 7:45 in the morning, I was always worried that I was going to hear bang, crash, boom, and that there was going to be an accident because it is just too easy for students to just take that landing strip like it's their personal highway.
that
So,
area actually won't be for student parking any longer. So we shouldn't have that issue.
Okay, since we're not voting on this tonight, I recommend we refer this to the budget committee. And
It doesn't, we only need some response, because they're gonna need to know if we wanna go this route. Because we're incurring costs, we will make up plans for us to talk about next month.
And for bid documents.
For bid documents.
What ones do we have to have bid documents for next month?
We're bringing both projects, the 9-4 building and the summer.
What?
We're calling it the 2022 Facility Improvements Project, which includes steel, high school, and then the courtyards at Kingdom Hall.
So I guess they do want approval.
So basically all of it.
Everything on your list, bid documents are coming January 3rd. January 3rd to review for a week, and then the January 10th order.
so it can be reviewed to budget committee to see what's doable.
Within the next 4 weeks, Rodney.
Yeah.
I guess, they need to know if we wanna move ahead, so they can make up documents, so. Right?
The board would still have to approve any bid.
But we're incurring costs to do their work like that. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, to give you a perspective, us giving you owner review set, we're 98% done with bid documents. So in 4 weeks, we will be almost near completion with the documents for you guys to approve to go out to bid.
So I guess, is there anything on this list that people are,
Well, maybe we should see the pictures that she has of some of these projects.
I have pictures of Bright Futures, I don't have pictures of the facilities projects.
You have pictures of the courtyards.
No, it's on my self drive. I can go get them. Okay, I'm gonna start and try to stay pretty high level on the 940 building. We're calling it the 940 Learning Center, so we're not dedicating it, but it is the Bright Futures project when it goes out to bid. The plan is a site plan on the bottom of the page, and the black outline is the current building.
Hello?
Yeah, Brian said it.
Start 9 o'clock up.
Yes.
Solar panels, you can see, are existing already on the building, so they're to remain. We are working in some skylights to bring in some natural daylight into the center of the building that we can't get from the outside.
Skylights or light bulbs?
We're calling these skylights. The gray area around the building is pavement that's being replaced. It's pretty bad in the back of the building, really bad in the back of the building, sort of bad on the east side. So that's going to become the bus lane for drop off of the Bright Futures. So they'll come south, proceed along the south side of the building, and then come up the one-way traffic area for drop off for Bright Futures. As they pass the west side of the building, this is where the new playground is located. There's many opportunities in this playground for equipment of all scales, sizes, and ability. It also has a tricycle path that circles all the way around that is made out of concrete. Everything inside the concrete border is a pour-and-play surface, so a very soft surface for the kids to run and play on. The green area that's shown in this picture is artificial turf. And we had a meeting again today with the landscape architect that's integrating landscape, colors, textures for the kids throughout the playground area. And as you can see, that was mentioned earlier, we have a landscape buffer outside the classroom windows that we'll see as we go into the plan.
Is there a fence around the playground area?
There is. So
Because there's parking for GABC behind that, correct?
correct. So there'll be a privacy fence that runs along the south side, it goes up to the north. As it gets to the north, it turns into a wall to kind of give it more of a barrier approach. And then along the north end is also a wall, and then the gates are located both in the northeast corner and southeast corner.
Depends on top of the wall.
It's about a 4-foot cord wall, and then there'll be fencing on top of that.
So you guys are a long ways away from seeing this, but I'll share the PDFs and you guys can look into this in more detail. The top portion is a rendering of the front of the building, and you can see there's a stone wall along this edge with a privacy fence on top of it, so sort of a double layer. We also have a proposed canopy out front, or on the west side, to provide additional shading to the playground area and to the walkway and drop-off area. To sort of transform this building into Bright Futures, we really wanted the public and students and parents to know that it was Bright Futures, so we're putting a kind of a playful window pattern in the northwest corner of the building, which will be our multi-activity room. So you can see we're playing with some of the primary colors and different size square windows on the north and west side of the building. Any questions about the site plan? There is a small rendering up in the corner of the playground itself. You can see there is an additional canopy over the one of the structures on the south end of the playground. And then there's different musical instruments and slides, hillside slides, different equipment for all uses.
Any
Also,
questions be directed to them?
Yes.
also, Courtney, you've seen the new privacy fence on the south side that we put up. That will also be on the east perimeter, so we'll go down all the east towards Pizza Hut, down there, and then it'll go all the way between us and HPW. The same fences on the south.
Okay. I just don't want no kids getting picked on by
Right.
class.
Yeah, yes.
Is that fence included in this
No.
bid, or is that
The fencing's outside, purchased through a different contract.
There's also in there's boulders and steps and stones of different grades. Those are already purchased.
And yeah, they're sitting on site right now, just waiting to be installed. So there is a two-phase portion of the construction project. All the infrastructure for the outdoor playground and indoor playground is being proposed to be done by June 1st, so the playground people can get in there and install that. They have a deadline, I think, at the end of June to have that installed and ready. So that'll be done early, and then everything else will follow behind that. Floor plan. So the main entry for Bright Futures will be in the multi-activity room, indoor play area in the northwest corner. The main building entrance is on the north, further towards the east. We are planning currently for 10 classrooms. They're just over 900 square feet, so about 920 that they're sitting right now in the space. Each classroom has their own toilet room. Each classroom is also linked to an integrated therapy room, which is where specialists will have their space along with 2 teacher desks. So the teacher's desks are outside of the classroom, which gives more space back to the classroom educational space. The multi-activity room is in the northwest corner. It does have a play structure, as I mentioned earlier, inside of it. It also will have pour-and-play surface underneath that play structure. And we also are building in another indoor small tricycle track around the indoor play area with additional square footage towards the south for other activities. This space has its own storage room. It also has its own toilet room that's also linked to the outdoors. So if a class is outside and the child needs to go to the bathroom, they have that access directly from the outdoors next to the multi-activity room. So 10 classrooms, 6 on the north, 4 on the west. The core of the building holds OT-PT down in the south end with a sensory room. There is a small eating cafeteria space, we're calling it with a servery to the north. Play-based assessment is in the center core of the building. This room will be kind of a multi-activity room. It'll allow resources to be handed out to parents, allow the administrators to engage with parents and students at a younger age and coming in. Principal's office is in the northwest corner, a smaller health office just below that. And then the employee lounge and teacher's workroom is in the very center of the building. This will serve the whole building, but also provide a very large workroom for all the teachers on the pre-K side. The east side of the building is currently scheduled for the district office side. So as you come in the main entry, there is a secure entry, secure vestibule, reception area off to the right. The doors going into Bright Futures will be locked, so when someone comes in, this space is truly a public space. It'll be locked down just to the public and won't have access to the private spaces or Bright Futures. Along the entire east side of the building are all the offices for the district office. So they're lined on the right-hand side and in this wedge-shaped corridor on the west-hand side. And then there's small conference rooms, copy rooms spread throughout this space to service the district office. The leftover space down at the bottom will be for tech storage and just general building storage. There's a lot of long-term documents that are being stored in other spaces throughout the district. This will give them a place to come together in one spot.
And that blue line at the bottom, that's into the area vocational area.
Correct. So this line separating the blue shaded area is GABC.
The bright purple.
The bright purple is the new boardroom. So part of the public space directly in is not only the boardroom, but it'll be used for everything. Teacher training, resource room, just won't be for Monday nights like tonight.
How big is it?
That room, we were, I don't know the square footage offhand, we're planning to seat, we had 70 seats in there in a boardroom setup. So in a teacher setup, you can get much more than that. For a boardroom setup, we were at 70.
Preschool, the opportunity to use that for parent activities too, I think.
Correct, yeah. So if the play-based assessment isn't large enough, they can definitely use the boardroom during the day. So as you can see, we're showing some figures of trees. So the idea or the concept behind Bright Futures is to bring the natures indoors and let the kids experience nature both indoors and outdoors. So we have a lot of tree themes and grasses and textures for the kids throughout the building. And you'll see in the next renderings.
Comment I'll make, this just didn't happen overnight. We've been meeting and talking, and Brian's probably ready to tell us to pack sand because we shot him down several times. So kudos to, there's been a lot of thought and work going into this.
Yeah, and it's been a good process. We've met with the teachers on at least 3 different occasions. They had some great feedback early on. We were able to implement some of the things that they had. We came back a second time and had further comments that we were able to implement. We haven't implemented everything, but I think we got the majority of the items, both from the teachers and the administration. So one of my pictures is not showing up. I'm not sure why. It just shows where the view is being taken up. So the top view is of a corridor view. So as the kids come in, we're trying to keep the natures indoors and then keep the learning theme throughout the building. So you can see the grass wall with the ABCs on top. And yes, I'm missing some ABCs, but it's cut off in the picture, so I apologize. We are treating the numbers of the classroom in large numbers, just to remind kids of counting as they walk down the corridors. In the corridor, you can see our representation of a tree and therapy stairs for kids that are active and need to go up and down spaces. The floor pattern is kind of a wavy river that runs through the entire length of the classrooms, along with some carpeted seats around the learning tree. We have small canopies that introduce kind of a house theme as you're walking into the classrooms. So we're just trying to use the colors of nature and nature, bringing them indoors in the corridor, in the classroom. And the bottom picture is of the multi-activity room. So there's another tree in here. And these trees are based around existing columns in the building. So as we were building out this old department store, we run into these columns. So it just gave us design opportunities to integrate them into the architecture.
So is the ceiling just open then, except
So,
for the
yes.
trees or the clouds or whatever?
In the corridors, they will be open. In the multi-activity room, they will also be open. In the classrooms, we're putting drop ceiling to help with acoustics. In the corridors, some of these leaf patterns, the green leaf patterns are acoustic panels. So that'll help cut down on some of the noise reduction through there. The carpet squares will also help with that. And the grass wall will too.
So the ceiling gets painted?
Yes.
And then all these things are hanging below it?
Below it.
To reduce the size?
The volume, yep. Any questions?
Do you have a picture of the classroom?
I don't.
You blow that up.
Oh, I do. Sorry, I did drop it out. So this was a highlight that we did for the teachers in zoning the classrooms. And as we recognized with them and walking their current classrooms, every teacher is different. They're going to set up their classrooms a little bit different, but we wanted to have some parameters to go for each classroom. So one of those was the difference between the soft surface and hard surface. So the line here with the green is all hard surface tile, which will be the LVT tile. And from the green north will be the carpeted areas. So softer spaces for the kids to sit down on. some of the areas are the learning areas, the block area, housekeeping area. So it gives them sort of a separation in hard versus soft surface. On each wall in each classroom, there'll be cubbies with doors. The doors in the cubbies will be magnetic and also have a writable surface. So they can write their names on it, they can put up their artwork on the doors. They'll also have a cubby for take-home items. You can see this, you guys are kind of far away, but in the renderings, there's cubbies on the wall. There's also a seat in each one of those for the kids that need more of an intimate space to read or get away for sensory needs in the classroom. On the demising wall between the classrooms, there's casework, two tall storage caseworks, upper and lower casework, and then a sink in each classroom.
The walls made up of casework will be an insulated wall between the classes too.
Correct.
Good.
Yes, there is a stud wall of insulation that goes full height. And then, as I mentioned before, the integrated therapy rooms, they have a door to the corridor for the specialists to come in and out without having to go into classrooms, but they are close enough to push in and pull out in the classrooms. And then 2 teachers' desks within the integrated therapy, a small conference room for bringing multiple kids in, or a kid and a parent in an integrated therapy room from the corridor.
Now, does this cost these estimates, we won't know until these go out the bid, does this include all the electronics for the doors, the locks, security cameras, all that stuff's built into that cost? Okay.
Yes.
Good.
So you can change it.
Yes. Now, do we know the moisture content of those spores?
No, we just talked about that the other day, is to test those spores, to see if we need to build in moisture mitigation into the bids or not.
Okay,
So
thank
we're
you.
working on that now. Try to avoid one last change.
Any other questions?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So do we need
Back to the
get any
agenda.
direction?
Yeah, we're back on the agenda. After having a little sidebar with Dr. Asplin, he did recommend that 3 items be voted on tonight. That'd be the inventory shelving, the steel casework, and the steel music room wall laminate.
Yeah, those are, I mean, everything else is, we've kind of gotten down the road of getting there, so we want to know, are these things you want to see? I mean, we believe that those are important projects too, but we don't want to have them going through a lot of work if that's something that people aren't indicating they're probably going to do. Because and the reason I want you to understand a little bit of this, so like, what are we doing? Like the track resurfacing, well, that's not really them. We already, you know, that's work that we can do outside of those guys. That's not something that they have to deal with. You know, the GHS windows, finish replacement, I mean, that's work we're gonna need to get done at some point anyway, so I think that's, you know, information we need to have, whether we decide to do it this year, next year, whatever. That's still information we would have if they were moving forward with this. The white call flooring, the runway strip, a lot of that stuff is stuff that we're gonna do separately, or they're gonna help with some of it, but it's all work that needs to get done. The stuff that's somewhat optional, it's all optional, but the inventory shelving and the steel casework, we believe is important, but they haven't done all the work to get the bid documents to do those. So, is there anybody that's against seeing those move forward?
So it's steel, you'd be looking at steel casework, the music room wall,
The
windows and the sensory pads while you're there.
Well, the sensory paths is part of a.
But that's money.
Yeah, so it's just not the sensory path part. I mean, we do have a situation where the steel music room is not, I don't wanna say as good as, but it's not as bright as the other building's music room, because when we cut the windows into the King music room when we remodeled it. When they remodeled the steel one back 10 years ago, 11 years ago, they decided not to do it. And that room's really dark. And then there also is moisture on that wall, so, you know, we felt like we should fix that. Much like there was on the south end of the building, we fixed that the same way. And then the inventory shelving, if you've never been out to Hawthorne, I get why you might glance at that number and go, oh, that's a lot of number. It is.
Yeah, it's a lot of shelves.
But we have a lot of stuff that's sitting out there in an unorganized manner. I mean, it's as organized as it can be given no shelving. But it's really an inefficient way to use that space. We feel like we will be money ahead over time when we know where everything is, we know when to order it, we know how much to get, we know when to get it. It's all part of that process, making sure we become more efficient with our inventory system. So I believe that they're good projects, but you know, admittedly, those things can also be done another year. You know, if we want to, I don't think we should.
So I'm okay with projects as long as it's not affecting the ability to complete the 712 campus. That is the only variable that's important to me. We can't add more and not get that finished. That's.
Well, for everybody else out there, anybody watching at home, we have had those discussions, and that's why these things ended up on the list. There were other things that we took off because we felt like those were things that we couldn't get everything done. You know, the windows at the high school is one that I don't think they'll get done in a year, but we've talked about ways to manage that bid so that they have to bid it all at one time, and then they'd have to store material, and they'd have to close up and move out and get everything done by August 1st, so that a teacher wouldn't ever notice that they were coming to do work or had done work other than if they got a new window. So that nobody's having to live in an unfinished building. You know, everything else on here is stuff that we kind of winnowed down. So I guess the thing is, I would not want to ask you guys to say yay or nay to the whole project right now. That's not fair. But is there anything on here we shouldn't be preparing to do work later? I mean, this is all, it's quality work to ask them to get the stuff done, because at some point we're gonna need it, you know, to get the paperwork ready to do good job. But that doesn't mean we have to let the bids, if we let the bids, it doesn't mean we have to accept it.
Question to you guys on the steel school stuff. So can that be work going on, and is that different crews? So it doesn't take away from the 712 building this summer, so that gets done? If we do go ahead and say, hey, do the steel casework and all that, is that a different set of construction?
Yeah, great question. For the most part, yes, it is a separate crew. If you look at the high school items, they really don't have much for casework, millwork, general carpentry in this next section. The majority of that work at steel is going to be some framing of new walls, or demo of existing casework, framing of new walls, and putting back new casework. You will have some small overlap of probably some floor patching, you know, but the flooring that we're looking at the high school in there is pretty minimal. It's basically patching back in around things that are being done. So I believe in looking at the group that we have a lot of work on that list, but there's a lot of trades. You know, you have your flooring, the big flooring projects on that list are all sports flooring, which is a totally different crew company than typical flooring. So I do feel like it is broken up well.
Yeah, the track is just a track company. The asphalt work out of or concrete work, depending on how it fits, for the parking lots, you know, that's not really taking away from anything else we're doing. The windows, you know, they already got their people in doing the windows, and there's very few windows in the van fire room. The casework, as you said, the flooring, they're not really, who has the flooring for the van? It's not the same people. And the van, area U.
Yeah, it's the same people that this, but they'll be done by.
That's TSI?
TSI, yeah.
But that's just carpeting.
LB.
Oh, I was thinking the auditorium. Yes, in the van room, it's LB. So there's not really a lot of anything in here that is going to be in the way of what they're doing at the high school. My big concern, and those are, there's no way they're gonna get the windows done. But they can stage that in a way that they can get it done in 2 years.
So I'm okay with, doing some of these projects, but if we're gonna like put some importance on things, I really want the sensory to still be, part of this. You know, I did get a chance to, at open house, check out those courtyards and, I mean, it needs done.
Well, quite honestly, because the grants, even if we didn't want that to be a priority, which we do, that needs to be a priority.
It really does, and, you know, being able to view that and have those conversations with those administrators and really talk about that need, so we do need to make that a priority, you know, if we're gonna say do this, that, put this off, and all those things, we need to make that a priority for us, so.
So is there anything anybody's super opposed to, or 4 of you were opposed to, so that we're not asking them to do work that nobody intends to ever do?
On the shelving, will that be, so you can tier stack, so,
Yes.
okay.
Because we take no advantage of the verticality of that building.
So do we have a forklift to accomplish that?
We are looking to purchase one. We're having trouble, so you know, the walkway between the front of the building and then the back, it's so low, we can't get a regular forklift through there. But the consultant is actually designing it for a standing forklift. So he thinks it'll work better anyways than a traditional one in order to access that verticality in there. So we'll be purchasing that once we get the final dimensions and.
Electric one comes,
I'm sorry, what?
electric one.
They're doing electrical, yes, absolutely.
So once again, to be clear, we're not really, the only money we're spending tonight is asking them to do any work. So this isn't committing any funds to any of these things.
So even the 3 items that you recommended.
Well, I'm saying those are, we can still table, yeah, we can table them. I mean, they just haven't done all the bid work on those 3 items, that's why I highlighted those, because those were a little bit separate from anything else we've already been doing. So they weren't really as far downstream as some of those things.
We are packaging as many of the items as we can in 2 different bid document sets. So when Brian mentions the 2022 facilities improvements, that's kind of the catch-all one, and then we have the Vertical Features project. So if you do table something down the road and bid it, obviously there'd be additional, so Brian to pull bid doc together on just a standalone steel job.
And if you're having a serious amount of heartache on some of this, I also want to point out, and I asked Jen to throw everything in here, like everything. So, you know, almost $2 million of this is buying GVC debt. So if you look at that, that's just moving money from one side of the ledger sheet to another. It's all us. Okay?
I was just gonna say, I don't have a problem with any of this, and I'd rather see it bid out, I'd rather see us move forward now, knowing how prices have increased in just the last 18 months that we've been working on some of these things. I don't wanna have to then, no, I just move forward.
How many different bids do you anticipate the board actually voting on? You said 2, but it's gonna be actually more than that.
So we'll come back to you 2 different times. One for the Bright Futures project, and on that project, we'll have all the bid packages broken out like we did with the other ones. So, we'll have, 10 or so, give or take, the bids that we're accepting, are all the same for the 2022. The timing that we're looking at is we're gonna approve in January the bulk bid sets or project collected bid, and then we're gonna stagger the bidding of those 2 projects in the plan. So the 2022 improvements will be the first one to hit the streets, and we'll have that one due and ready to bring back in February for approval. And then the Bright Futures will hit the streets before the February board meeting, but then we'll bring that to approval in March. So kind of a staggered approach. Also, part of the thought process there is if there's a contractor that has manpower issues and they get the first job, that will help them understand the schedules of the 2 projects and if there is overlap concern, and will adjust their bid or make them not want to bid the second job. So we can maintain that criticality of schedule.
I think we also need to remember that the 940 building being available for the preschool is not looking until August of 23.
Correct. Well, and we want to do, like the parking lot behind Whitehall, in between Whitehall and high school, if all the bids come in acceptably, we can start that work as soon as spring hits. So that that's done out of the way, so we're not worried about that being a problem. Because it's what we counted today, it's what, 126 parking spaces back there for our staff.
Not counting.
So I mean, it's a really important part of the 712 concept. The Whitehall floor is a big part of the concept, I mean, to space all the junior high buildings, to get everything done, that's very important.
And then we also talked the landscaping, you know, figuring that out, so we need to get that done early because, like the parking lot islands or certain areas, the front of the high school, certain areas we're gonna phase that to your spring planting season. Then the rest of the areas that can't, like the courtyard, will go to the fall planting season. You only really have 2 seasons to plant. You don't wanna plant in July. That's not really good for everybody, so, you know, just kind of getting that sequence in there.
I'm in, you know, camp, I say to move forward.
I think we should just not single anything out, so, yeah, let them do their job, and like you said, we don't have to set it if we don't want to.
And if we decide that every too high, a year from now, we say, hey, we wanna pull up those back, we have them. It's not like they have to recreate it.
Well, I don't know if I necessarily agree. You know, this is a $15 million expenditure, and I literally just got it, I don't know,
2 hours ago.
2 hours ago to look at. I agree, most of the stuff is, you know, I feel pretty confident about it, but, you know, I would feel more confident if I had a meeting, you know, a month's time to review the data, ask questions, you know, and make sure that, you know, we're in a good enough position to spend that money. But I'm just one vote of 7, so.
Right, but we're just telling them to move forward with the plans. We're not voting on anything tonight. So you still have a month to ask your questions.
And then another month to accept the bids for more questions, and then another month for the 940 building in March.
So the soonest an expenditure would be voted on would be February. They're just making, okay, so I'm sorry, they're just making plans to present to us. We're paying them to do that, and that's all we can say.
Correct.
But there are plans to keep, right? So
Yeah.
we have to see with them, there's still our plans.
That's my point, yeah, but all this work, I 100% understand what Rod's saying, and I agree with the sentiment. But to make you feel better, you know, the truth is, this is all work we're gonna need to do one way or another, whether it's not this year, it's 2 years from now. So that those documents would still be available for us to use.
Robert's rules, I'm gonna call the question because it is 10 till 10 and some of us have, children and actually immediately more to that, bathrooms to get to. So I'm also gonna call the question and then say that we need to take a break because there's a whole side of us over here that need at least 5 minutes.
I'm good with that.
So where
Do we want to?
Really, are we, yeah, I mean, really, it
Let's
wasn't
finish
necessarily
this.
So call the question just means, are we letting them move forward and then they'll bring bids to us?
Is anybody super opposed to us moving forward and just get the bid documents done?
Nope. Yeah.
Okay, Rob, what time we coming back?
Let's make it 10 o'clock, 10-minute break. All right, everybody. It's 10 o'clock, we're back from recess. Next item on the agenda is focus area 2, letter B. Consider approval of change order request for junior senior high chiller piping.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so this one, so going through coordination, one of the main things we do before we sell any new piece of mechanical equipment was we would check with the final rep and make sure that the design documents and whatever we install will work. An error was discovered on the documents that with the chiller that purchased, the piping is showing a 2-inch and it needs to be 5 1/4. So we had to emphasize the piping that feeds those chillers to the pumps. So this change order is to change that piping to the appropriate size. We did do, according to the manufacturer and the contractor, that had all different material options. What we're bringing you today is actually going from 2-inch copper to 5 1/4 the carbon steel, which is more cost effective in this current market. Copper is really, really expensive and you can't get it that big. Kind of we need, so all operates the same efficiency, all that stuff. So typically when you're 2 inches or below, you go with copper. When you go above, you go with a different product type. So that's the reason for the material change.
So will we have air conditioning in May?
Yes.
Good.
Approve this.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the last, all the equipment's there, it's set, we're working, this, item was identified earlier this fall, but it took us a while to work through all the vetting process, this one to bring to all you folks today, so, we did get it down to the original bid budgets and, we're working through, Leggett and RTM and making sure we get the appropriate design put in place. So we recommend, one of the ways to get it down farther is Northwest reluctantly agreed to do the work on a TNM not to exceed. It's a little more work for them to track it, but we felt like with this big dollar amount, that was the appropriate method to go, because if they, estimated it high just to make sure that things went well, we wanted to take advantage of the savings instead of the cheaper. So there would not be any more than this amount, but potential if it goes well for installing.
Any additional questions?
So this is going from 2 inch to 5 1/4, you said?
5 1/4 back in the day, I think. One of the two. I'd have to look.
So it takes that much more water and everything we increase that much, so we've gotta go that big?
With this chiller, yeah, because this is a central plant chiller. So with this system, you have the central plant and all the boilers in one area and all the chillers. So that's a lot of flow for that whole building.
Allison?
Rodriguez? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Hernandez?
Aye.
Westhav? Spencer? Aye. Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Next item, need a motion to consider approval of change of order request for junior senior high expansion joint compass.
So,
Wait a second. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Sorry. So this one is, if you have been through the new space, it was very clear after putting the new flooring in, the existing expansion joints were rough shape. So the district asked us to price up new expansion joints throughout the whole facility, and that's what this is. So brand new stainless steel expansion joints to put in all existing expansion joint locations.
So how many is there?
I don't have the count on the top of me. I know it's, remember Darren offhand? Let's see if I can get it. Yeah, it's quite a few. They had a lineal footage versus the quantity of them, so I don't remember offhand, but it's,
Who's doing it?
Precision Builders.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're already on site.
Yep, they're already on site.
Yes, 500 linear feet.
Oh, yeah, I did put that in there, 500.
It's very much a safety issue. I've actually had my shoe caught in one of the existing ones in about.
Yeah,
So there's some that aren't even there.
Some aren't even there, doing some, and then the ones that are there are kind of wavy, and they're not question.
Allison?
Sherby?
Aye.
Bestad?
Aye.
Ledger? Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyons? Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Okay, next, I need a motion to consider approval of change order request for Area J HVAC controls.
So moved.
Second.
Alright, so this one, Area J, which is the media center, has the existing controls. We talked about it in the 2022 improvements. We're gonna change it to Thin 2 heaters. This change order request is for the controls for the existing air handling units in that space. They're formerly run off the pneumatics, which is the air powered controls. The assumption was based on old documents that had standalone pneumatic controller and air compressor up in the penthouse. It was not as tied to the central system in the boiler house. So when that central system went away, so did all the control to the media center. So right now it's on or off. So with the mild winter we've had, it's been, those heaters have had some nice sauna days that we've had to cycle on and off.
And you're wearing shorts in December.
Yeah. So the one question that did get brought up to me on this one is with the current state of material lead times. Okay, if we approve this, is it gonna make any difference? Question, and we did track that down. The material parts are out a ways, but they were able to procure and set aside and put earmarks on all the pieces for this to have this operational by the 7th of January. So if we approve this today, I got confirmation from the controls contractor. They have leads on all the materials they need and the pieces and components to be able to get this done. If not before students come back, all the wiring would be pulled, work on the student space would be done before students come back, but it may take a few extra days, the rest of that week to get everything operational. But we would have control of that system then by January 7th.
Allison?
Bestad?
Aye.
Ledger? Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyons? Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sherby?
Aye. A motion to consider approval of change order request for Area B floor plan.
So moved.
Second.
Alright, this one, Area B, so we talked a while back when we were doing Area J, the media center, we had high moisture content in that space. The rest of the 57 is on a crawl space, so we don't have to worry about it. Now we're getting into the vocational center. And testing that slab, we were exceeding 90% moisture in that slab as well, similar to where we were at module J, which high moisture glue goes up to like 85%. So typically that will get us to most scenarios. In the high school scenario, that seems like the ground is very wet and it's continue to come up. So this is for moisture mitigation and some additional floor prep. The additional floor prep is where the old, if you remember the JVC hallway, they had block walls on either side. We took down the one, which is where those the pods go down the center, but the block went through the slab and it's pretty uneven between those sides. So we can do some additional prep and grinding through that to get that to the point for flooring. So the total slab prep and moistures in this change order, you may note that it says not to exceed. The budget on these items assume doing the majority of work second shift. Talking to the contractor in the district, I believe we can shift a lot of this stuff to first shift, and that will take the number down. So it will not exceed this, but it should be less than this, but that's what we came to as a worst case scenario, not knowing the timing of when the work had to be done and how disruptive it would be for those students that would be coming.
Allison?
Ledger? Cervantes?
Aye.
Lyons?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sherby?
Aye.
Bestad?
Thank you. Moving on, I need a motion to consider approval of addendum to facilities use agreement between the city of Galesburg and CUSD 205. Okay. Did you get somebody else?
You can take this.
Okay.
Take what you want.
Jen? Is this you?
Oh, I can talk about it.
Okay.
So Mr. Matthews would be if he were here, but you were here tonight for the game. So our old agreement between the city and the school district regarding who paid for capital improvements was either vague or absent. So we asked them to update it, so we're happy to put this forward where it says very clearly that any capital upgrades, meaning to the playing surface, the fence, or the lights would be split 50-50.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's a good thing for us, so.
Do they have intentions of making any improvements?
Actually, yeah, in talking to them, they know we need to, especially with the height of the lights and some of the fence. We also know some of the playing surfaces are great. So, so we'll have to start looking at that jointly, if we approve it.
Allison?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharkey?
Aye.
Seska?
Aye.
Hatcher?
Aye.
Okay, a motion to consider approval of copy paper.
So moved.
Second.
And this would be Mrs.
That's me.
Okay, in front of you, you have an approval for, a request for approval of our copier bids. You will see that we did not recommend going with the lowest bidder based on lead times for, the order. So the lowest bidder had an 8 to 10 week lead time, and we would be out of paper at that point. So we're looking at recommending, Document Imaging out of Yorkville. They have a 2-week lead time once this is approved. Does anyone have any questions?
How's our use compared to times before we had all these electronic devices? Are we down in number of pages we copied?
I have not seen the paper cut, report. So Mr. Roberts was supposed to be getting that to me, and I think we're gonna review it tomorrow. So I can let you know next month.
Thank you.
Paper cut's the program that manages all of our copies and
You have a
usage.
company for that too, huh?
It's a software
It's a
package.
software package, just count copies.
We don't have a paper counting consultant.
Let's not.
She making fun of me?
No. Hey, there's a consultant for everything, so I'm just making sure that you know we're not paying for one, so.
Allison?
Lyon?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Sharkey?
Aye.
Seska?
Aye.
Hatcher?
Aye.
Tomas?
Aye.
Okay. Need a motion to consider approval of TRS supplemental savings plan.
So moved.
Second.
After reading your documents on this, it sounds like a waste of our time and a waste of the paper.
Wow.
Tell us how you
Okay.
On the supplemental savings?
Yeah, you said we're not gonna do it anyway. We can't.
No, that's not, so.
I misunderstood.
TRS basically is telling us we have to do it,
Right.
and our legal representatives, both from HR, consulting, and, Luke's firm are recommending that we just do without any of the optional language, keep it as vanilla as possible right now. Because TRS is basically saying you have to do it, so we're doing the minimum required, even though nobody actually uses this plan yet.
But beginning on July 1, there will be mandatory contributions for all Tier 3 employees.
But they haven't defined tier 3 yet.
Right, but that is,
If it weren't 10-15, we could go into allowance as little, so it's big.
it doesn't require us adding any contributions, doing anything other than just advising people of the option.
So is this what, TRS sent to people that are in it and
Yes.
gave options?
Yep, that's
Well, I
exactly what
read
they did.
through it and I will not approve that.
For yourself.
All right, I mean, we'll do the minimum.
Well, let's
It's
say,
a joke.
please do the minimum. After that, yeah, we'll advise people.
We're not adding any contributions or making any recommendations to that effect.
No, it's bad.
I threw mine away after I got it, but no.
So basically for just maybe the public's benefit, this is a defined contribution plan, like a 401k out in the business world. It's a 457 that TRS would like its members to contribute to, which means that TRS takes the money and TRS invests the money. And in essence, it's the state of Illinois who's investing your money for retirement. So
We've had 19% this year, according to the report.
Allison?
So what am I?
All you're doing is that we're adopting it, that we actually have one.
Language, is that our, what we?
Yeah, that we're just approving the supplemental savings plan that TRS gave us. It doesn't mean we're making anybody contribute to it. We have
we
it on there.
can offer it to our employees.
It's like 40 pages.
Aye.
Rodriguez? Aye. Sharkey?
Aye.
Hessad?
Aye.
Fletcher? Francis?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Okay, the next item is changes to the 2021-22 school calendar.
Yeah, and this doesn't need a vote, this is me putting this on here for everybody's information, we'll put something out to staff tomorrow. After discussing some issues with the GEA and some issues that many staff members were concerned about, we're gonna remove the school improvement days on January 13th, March 8th, and June 2nd, which were gonna be half days, now they'll be 1 hour early release dates. And right now it says December 22nd is a regular day, and that will become a 1 hour early release, and we'll announce that tomorrow.
So then when will we be working on school improvement?
At night, they'll have their team meetings
At night, under what conditions?
under the conditions, under the contract of paying the people that show up.
So we're paying them extra to go to school improvement when they could be doing it during school hours?
Yeah, the other option is to add half days in somewhere else to do school improvement, and we didn't feel like this was the year to do that. What we'd initially planned to do was to have the school improvement days on the last day of each term, but that was one of the grievances that went to arbitration. And so in our communications council, this was the deal that we struck to remove that arbitration case.
It's something they want to look at next time we have contract negotiations.
Yeah. So the school improvement teams will still meet, they'll just meet after work.
You can tell by my face I am oh so pleased.
I can't.
She's really excited.
Dr. Springer, what happens on school improvement days?
We evaluate the data and the progress towards goals. Staff collaborate. They look at where their progress is thus far, make changes to the instructional path, and move forward from there.
What are they supposed to be doing during the time that they're fighting that for?
Well, in the contract, it said the last days of the term will be a 1 hour early release.
Okay.
And so their point was that we violated the contract because we didn't make it a 1 hour early release, we made it a school improvement day. During the school improvement day, we gave them a 1 hour release in there to do grading, so it was a disagreement. I'm not saying either's right, either's wrong.
That's when they do their grading, correct?
Yeah, but this is their way to resolve the conflict. Our way, not their way, our way.
So are they included when we do a calendar?
Yes, they have a committee.
No, this was a
I'm just
contract
asking, I
issue.
wasn't part of that whole.
The calendar committee did not pick the school improvement days, in fairness.
So that may be something we might want to look at, you know? So we don't
Right.
have to include all this stuff. So we don't have
It wasn't an issue though at the beginning of the year when we approved it, but now it is. So, to our point, as a board, it wasn't an issue when the calendar came out.
Wasn't? I mean, it's come to a point where.
Well, now it's an issue.
Where it was going to arbitration, that means they took many steps up to the agreements and all that stuff.
This is the one that
I'm just saying, that's how a union works.
This is the one that skips steps. That's what I just heard from our two
Yes.
negotiating committee.
Yeah, so we got agreements, I denied it, thinking it was at step one. And they made their case, I'm not saying they're right, I'm wrong, I'm right, they're wrong. But their point was that because it affected everybody, it was automatically step two, so they had the right to go to arbitration. I made the complaint in the arbitration filing that we didn't think that they followed the proper steps, but that's up to an arbitrator to decide, so, you know, rather than spend all the time arguing and spending money on arbitration, felt like this was an amicable trade.
Okay, moving on, need a motion to consider approval of tax levy.
I would love to make such a motion.
Thanks.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Ham?
Okay, Allison, can you go up the levy certificate, please?
So last month I presented the tentative levy, and we proposed that we lower the tax rate from $4.90 to $4.77, which means we're asking for $213,501 less in this year's levy than we did in the previous year's levy. We did not alter or adjust any of those numbers since last month. We verified with the assessor's office that we do believe that those increases in EAV in Knox County, which is always the one that is a little bit questionable, will be about 1.7% increase in EAV for tax year 21 here in Knox County and approximately 6% in Warren County. So we're comfortable with these numbers and how that'll impact our overall budget.
The EAV's going up 6% in Warren County?
Yes.
Yeah, your tax bill's going up.
Thank you.
You both of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
Sal.
You're welcome.
But your tax rate's being lowered.
Your rate's gonna be lower. Your EV's up.
Any questions, comments?
We could have a lot of comments, but.
Allison.
Roll.
Aye.
Aye. Patrick? Aye. Samantha?
Aye.
Ryan?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Hey, just lower the tax.
Okay.
That's exciting.
Next is a motion to consider approval of press policy. This is the first reading.
So moved.
As a member of the policy committee, and I'm gonna be out of town for 2 weeks in January, I would like us to not bring this back in January, but bring it back in February.
And
I think that's an excellent.
thank you for saying that. I was gonna say, we're probably not gonna have enough time between now and the next time, but I will be, giving the policy committee my recommendations over.
So we come back to this in February, is that okay?
That's the plan. We're just
Okay.
putting as a placeholder first reading here now to get that done, so that we
Would
can.
you like to review each policy today?
No.
What's that forever?
It's the longest one ever.
Sure.
No, but in that vein,
The color coding helps them.
but in that, toward the end, at one point, we had created a policy review schedule,
Yeah, it's probably time to do that, yeah.
and we had created a calendar so that we didn't have to review the entire.
Well, but this is because of the press update.
Right, I
So we're
know.
sticking to the schedule. This
Yeah.
is the press update is this thick.
Correct. So, outside of that, though, I don't know that we've actually stuck to our calendar of reviewing certain policies.
It's every 2 years it should be.
Okay.
I have that on my calendar.
Okay.
I'm looking in my brain right now. I think it's next year.
Okay.
I'll go back and double check. I think it's next year.
Well, it wasn't this year.
We do it
I was
last
on the
year.
policy committee the whole time.
Right,
We
right.
do it last year.
It was last year.
One of the nice things we did is reviewed all the policies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Well overdue.
So this just needs a voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, need a motion to consider approval of resolution abating the tax heretofore levied for the year 2021 to pay debt service on general obligations school bonds.
So moved.
Second.
This is the presentation, right?
No.
No, this is done. This is to abate, the one cent sales tax portions of our bonds from the levy. So each year we have to abate those so that they don't go on the levy. And that we use our 1 cent sales tax proceeds to fund those bonds for 2014.
And G and H are basically identical, except they're two different bond issues, so
Yes.
it's the same explanation for H as it is for G. It's just so our tax rate doesn't go up, we're using 1 cent facility sales tax money to replace the property taxes.
Allison?
Patrick? Aye. Samantha?
Aye.
Ryan?
Yes.
Phelps?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Shelby?
Aye.
I move H to be accepted.
Second.
Second. No.
Okay, any discussion? Allison?
Samantha?
Aye.
Ryan?
Yes.
Phelps?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Shelby?
Aye.
Lestad?
Aye.
Patrick? Aye.
Okay, we already did, the next item. Next is the youth sports gym usage discussion. Dr. Atkins.
Well, in light of the timing and in light of it, the issue that it is, so I just want to frame the discussion, and I would recommend that we pass this off to a smaller group to bring back a recommendation. But we have Future Streaks basketball and Junior Streaks baseball here, and these are the bills that if we followed our billing strictly by facility use, you would see that they are sizable. We have not charged the Junior Streets and the Future Streets in the past, or if we did, it was just for custodial fees. And so we would like to talk about how you would like to proceed, because obviously this would be a big departure. But also, member Beth Tab and I had a phone conversation that I would appreciate if she could illuminate everybody on what she talked to me about, because there are some very pertinent issues there as well.
So, I've been coaching Future Streaks since we moved back. Oh gosh, what year did we move back? I don't know now. 2017-ish, 18. So, the thing about Future Streaks, how it runs for basketball, is that you pay a fee, just depending on what grade you might be in. As you get older, the fee's a little less. And so, looking at now these numbers of what it might cost to be in that gym, the question that I would raise is, one, who's gonna pay it? With the fee, the kids get jerseys, and then they travel, and I'll say that Chad Townsend has done very well since he's taken over the program to get these kids in tournaments versus just going to one place like just Canton for the day and then be gone. So now we go to places like TBK, play 3 games. Beyond the Baseline is where we were at last weekend. So these kids are getting exposure to tournaments that they were not getting previously before in Future Streaks. One thing that I do know is that with us talking about, access and equity and all those things, and the conversation that I was having was that, as an example, Rock Island, they own their Future Streaks, their Future Rocks team. Our program has Future Streaks attached to it, and we don't own it. It's a separate entity currently right now. So when we talk about charging our team that holds Future Streaks to it, and then charging them an extra fee, who actually would pay this fee? The children? So the question I ask is, could there, one, be more kids that could be involved if the district actually took on this program that has our name on it, and our head coaches actually coach? These kids are learning, once they hit 7th grade, the plays for basketball. So it just raises the question of, what are we doing here? If our goal is to improve and get athletes that can play, regardless of what sport it is at what point do we tie these two things together?
So I don't know if, so Future Streaks is a traveling
It
team
does
for what
travel.
age groups?
It just depends, but they can start as early as 3rd grade, and it goes all the way up until 8th grade.
So at each grade level, there are like 10 kids participate, 8?
It varies,
It
so.
depends on how many kids try out.
Correct.
It's a tryout thing.
Oh, this is a tryout?
It
They have
is.
to go and try out, but,
So
so
that's
they
like-
had tryouts this year, but everybody made it for my daughter's team. I don't know about your team,
So,
but everybody made
yeah.
it on our team, because there just
So-
wasn't enough.
Essentially.
Now, your daughter paid how much money to participate, or you paid how much money to
So you
participate?
can fundraise, or you can play per player, and you either pay the 150 in fundraise, or you pay 200.
So where's the one, is the 150 paid like for hotel
It
rooms?
no,
and
it
things?
pays for your kid to play at the basketball tournament and your kid to have a jersey.
And you get your kid there.
You take your own kid there, yes, correct.
So where's the the jersey costs $10,
Tournament entry.
where's the $140 going?
Tournament entry fees for your kid to play in any
That's why
tournament.
those.
And there's probably 8 to 10 tournaments that we play.
Yeah.
At one every weekend almost, from November to February.
And so we charge them for the practice, they use our practice space without a fee.
We
Who
practice
pays
in
the
Lombard.
insurance?
they're also using our facilities
Yeah,
for
that's for
tournaments
sure.
that we're
Good.
holding.
What's that?
They're also using our facilities for tournaments they're holding for other teams to come.
You
Do
would pay
we
ticket
pay to
prices?
use the field house?
What?
Do we pay to use the field house?
Well, that's
I'm
I
asking
see.
you. When we hold the tournaments at Future
currently
Streets?
not, no.
Okay, so where does that other team's money go when they pay to play
Into
our
the
tournament?
Excellent question.
There-
Future Streets account.
Right.
that we
To
will-
pay for everybody's
So there-
tournaments,
there's-
because I'm sure my
yeah.
$200 does not cover my.
So there's a few
day,
issues
yes.
here. Where's all the money go? Where's it going? You know, our name's attached to it.
Right, and I just asked this other question about baseball, why is it because
So they're using our facilities, do our teams, district teams get precedence over the gyms to practice before junior streets do?
Yes,
They should, like
yes,
college.
they do,
They do.
they do.
In fact,
We
tonight
work
we're doing
around,
that as well.
yeah, Future Streets works around them, so like, as an example, tonight, my daughter was practice, and the practice got changed because like volleyball wasn't there.
I think when we instituted the fee structure, it was to cover associated expenses, like having, you know, custodians clean up the mess afterwards.
Right.
So are we still charging for the custodian?
Not paying anything.
Apparently, we haven't done anything, yeah, I don't know.
We haven't gotten any money from them in several years. So,
But one thing I want to make point though is that originally Future Streets started out with like the YMCA, that no longer is.
Right.
We have our head coaches running these programs. So, you know, that's something we really need to take into consideration about what we're talking about here. You're gonna be charging your head coaches to run Future Streets and then charge your students in the district, by the way, only your students in the district, to use our services.
Well, so yeah, so there's several issues we need to unpack, not tonight, but there's several issues we need to unpack. There's necessarily a nexus between Future Streets and Junior Streets because, one, they use our name, two, they use our facilities, three, they use our coaches. Okay, so there is a nexus. If we want to say there isn't one, there is one. There's at least a little bit of one.
Well, we only use the coaches to schedule tournaments because the coaches are volunteers. Because I
understand.
coach and Pam coach,
I
and neither of
understand.
us get paid to do that.
Correct.
But there are other travel teams that are out there too, and so we have to unpack that because if we just say, okay, well, this travel team is good and this travel team's not good, why are we making that decision? And so this is, honestly, we're bringing this to the fore because it's been kind of a hot button issue for a number of years that we kind of, you know, dance around, and we just assume not do that. So we'd like to be able to say, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. Pam brings up great points. The things I told her on the phone, like, hey, it does clear up a lot of confusion. My biggest concern is transportation, that if we started saying, okay, those are ours, now we gotta transport those students. And that's a concern. But these are things we need to parse out and figure out how we're gonna move forward because people are confused, and rightfully so, because they're sort of us, but they're not really us.
Right.
And we haven't charged them, and we're trying to tighten up all the other fundraising and do all that, so this seemed like the time to probably try to bring that under the
No, but there's other,
discussion of that
there's
same issue.
other athletic teams that utilize our facilities,
Yes,
right?
yes.
That do
In the
charge
past,
like the baseball field, the softball fields, and.
yeah, we have
I think
charged,
the shoot force maybe, you know, they use ours.
we used to charge who's the softball team? We charged Crush, but then they stopped using our field.
Right, and then we charge like other entities in town that our kids go to, like, for instance, Member Rodriguez's daughter dances and we charge her dance studio for the rental of our facilities.
Right,
So it's very inconsistent on who we charge and who we do not charge.
right.
I mean, I understand, but like what Pam said is gonna pay for it.
Right,
Yeah.
there's not a right answer, I just think,
That's a
I'll be
lot of
honest with you,
money.
like, yes. And we're trying to figure out which rule do we
Right, and I get that,
enforce and which one don't we, so we just rather get everybody on a discussion and say,
We
okay,
have
what are the rules?
something going forward, if grandfather these in.
Well, that's why I say I recommend that we have the facilities and the budget committee at least study it
No?
and look at, and that's 3 people, because Rodney's has a good portion of being on both of those. And Maury and
How does that relate to those, like, camps you during the summer? Are they similar?
They're different yet similar.
How are they different?
So you have, no, because you have, so the confusion has been when our head coaches started getting involved in junior streaks. Prior to Coach Reynolds, these programs, this basketball program specifically, was run through the YMCA.
Or the city.
Or the city.
Or the city, yeah.
And so at some point, the basketball program assumed some responsibility because they wanted to have their system taught throughout the process. And so they, in essence, took on some responsibility that the other teams, so baseball like G-Force and Crush and others don't, because they are separate. The camps that are held in the summer are usually offered as quote-unquote training camps for the teams that are playing right now for the district. So like the football camp, if they host like say a junior camp for kids, that's more about community building. It's not necessarily because it's part of a football program.
But they charge for them.
They do. They have in the past. They've used them as fundraisers.
We also don't charge JFL, by the way. I just want to make sure that's about.
This is confusing.
But wait, it's because it's confusing. And so
We're gonna have a really long talk about it another day.
yeah, but I just wanted to put it out there so when we came back for a recommendation, it didn't come from
All right.
An hour and a half will be another day.
All right.
So we will schedule that meeting, and then when we talk about it next time, people have a context for why we're doing it.
Okay, next is bids for activity bus discussion.
Jim.
Okay, so our activity buses are getting older. They're 2014, so they have quite a few miles for activity bus usage. We use these literally on a daily basis for a myriad of things. I forwarded some information to the board.
This is what we got in our email last
Yeah.
week.
Yes. So we have 3 activity buses. One has 57,000 miles, one has 63,000, and one has 65,000. So I'm recommending that we go out to bid for the activity buses, see what kind of price and if we can even get them. Availability is going to be a huge issue to see if we can trade in our current activity buses.
See, are there some buses that are better than other buses? Do they buy junky buses?
So I brought to pose the question, you're only 50-some thousand miles, so to me, that's like, why are we replacing? So I talked to Rod, who happens to get the privilege of driving one for tennis at some point, and he said, Rodney, those buses are bad.
They're bad.
Yeah,
And
they look bad, and
when you go to some other schools that have buses, you pull up the side, you're almost embarrassed, you wanna park away, because, so I have to go by somebody that's been in them, because 50,000 to me is it's just broke in, that I shouldn't be replacing it. But, so I did a drive-by and looked at the rust and dents, and I didn't even get to look inside, so.
They're difficult to drive. I had the pleasure of driving one for about 11 hours one day, right after COVID hit, and we delivered graduation signs. And let me tell you, they don't always start when you want them to. They are not easy to drive. They are in rough condition.
We keep them indoors at night, correct?
No, they're outside.
What's parked inside the golf cart?
Because we literally use them every day, like there would be no way for us to transport them back and forth.
Yeah.
Because you don't need a CDL to drive those, which is one of the advantages. So the
One of
coaches
them I
use
know,
them.
we turn them off, the heart starts going off.
Yes.
And it's not embarrassing.
Only 14 students.
to make sure
It's still, yeah, it's still, yeah. So do you go to Early Bird, or who do you buy them?
So we put out bids, and then any company that can fit those bids can bid on the activity bus. So we have the bids ready, we just need the board to approve for us to, or not to approve, but
Just
Yeah,
give
I
us
really
a
wasn't
blessing.
finished about the buses. I don't think school buses and city buses are all created equal. I think some companies do a better product than others. And I think we should, since we weren't happy with how these lived, we should stay away from whatever brand bus we have this time. And buy accordingly.
How old are these?
14.
7 years.
That's about right.
Okay.
You're gonna get a Bluebird or a Thomas or an IH. I mean, that's what I'm gonna say.
Well, I'm all in favor of having the driving.
So you all look at it.
Everybody else in agreement?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. Motion to approve trip request.
So moved.
It's, Andy MP asking for the band to go down to Western, spend the night for a festival.
Lester?
They got invited, and there were like 4 bands that got invited.
Yeah, but they have late night practice.
It's the end of February.
And do we know what Western's, sorry to be that person.
The COVID policy?
Yes.
They have very strict COVID protocols.
Allison?
Yes.
Aye.
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 Yes.
A motion to consider approval of personnel request.
So moved.
Any questions? Allison?
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Kirby?
Aye.
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 Lyon?
Yes.
Okay, next is
Yeah,
grievance
next two.
update.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we believe we have one of the arbitration issues resolved. The other one's still out there. There's no other outstanding grievances. And there's no FOIA requests this month, which is weird because we always get them, but this month we didn't.
Okay. Next comments by Board of Education. All the way down to Karen. Rodney?
Yeah, I've got several, no, I'm just kidding.
Okay,
Your turn.
Well, I'm sorry we missed, I missed, and maybe we all missed the ability to go to the high school play when we were in Chicago for the school board convention. I hope it went well. I have not heard a report. You saw my note about that. And I hope next year they get to be in the new theater.
Everybody's looking at you.
I'm tired too, but first I want to say thank you because this is the last meeting before we head out on a break. Thank you for everyone who has done their due diligence so that we could stay in school successfully for this entire amount of time. And I hope that people are diligent and continue to be diligent while they are home on their break and spending much needed time with their families so that when we come back in January, we are still able to stay in person. There is still a lot of stuff out there, so if you're still not vaccinated, please get vaccinated, and if it's time for your booster, then head on out. And there is a clinic for 5 to 12-year-olds. So look that information up with the health department so that we can continue to stay in person. And just thank you to the presenters. This evening, my son did not have the pleasure of having Mary Warren Singh as a teacher, but I tell you that every time I have ever had a conversation with that teacher, she exudes passion and excitement for her job and her role working with children. And so I'm just extremely happy that Silas has her. The outreach workers, you do tremendous work, and it can feel all over the place. I did have the pleasure of knowing Brian when he was at Gale, and you know, know a variety of the other outreachers in different capacities, but I also just have to give shout outs to Gala because she and I graduated together. And so just seeing her back in our district and working with our students and being at the high school is also exciting for me. So I just wanted to say that.
I didn't wish she was that young.
Okay, thank you. Likewise, in light of the late hour and everybody staying here, I don't have any comments either. Any future agenda items?
I'm still worried about the solar being sold to our community. No, I think we don't need to keep them honest on that. And invite them back, as you said, in March.
I'm not getting a warm and fuzzy from it, I'll be honest with you.
What is that?
He's gonna be here for a week, you should call him, you got his business card. He took the red eye to be here last night.
Anybody else have any?
Rough life, sitting business class.
Right.
Okay, the next meeting is Monday, January 10th at 7 p.m. 2023.
22.
It seems like it's been a year since here. Motion to adjourn.
Go move.